Chapter 1030. Shen Miao pushed his hand away and said, "You cannot let me be a rice worm that only knows how to eat. I dare not underestimate you." Xie Jingxing smiled and sighed. "Since you want to know, I will not hide it. You once told me that you had a real dream, and that dream was very tragic. Now what I am going to tell you is not a dream but something that really happened." The journey from Longyi to the Ding capital would require at least half a year to reach even with the fastest horses. Do you always want to know why did I become the son of the Marquis of Linan? For so many years, I obviously knew about my birth but did not return to the Great Liang. It is not because I do not want to return but because I cannot return. His gaze gradually became sharp. Xie Jingxing's real name was Xie Yuan and his courtesy name Jingxing had the meaning of looking up to the high mountain, doing things in Jingxing, representing that the person who gave him this name hoped that he would be a person of noble character. Not to mention whether the name was successful or not, it showed the deep love of the person who gave him this name. The person who gave him this name was his imperial father Emperor Shao Wu Xie Yilong, and the one who gave him the courtesy name was his Empress mother Empress Jing Xian and Empress Shao. Emperor Shao Wu Xie Yilong was the most outstanding prince in the Great Liang imperial court and held the military power in his hands, stabilized the four seas, was handsome, heroic, and high-spirited. If there was anything bad, it would be because he was the youngest son. The Great Liang imperial family did not support the youngest, and this was the rule since ancient times. But Xie Yilong was too outstanding, and the more outstanding a person was, they would either be indifferent to worldly matters or they would be ambitious and difficult to quell. Unfortunately, Xie Yilong was the latter, and adding on to the fact that the crown prince was inferior to him, Xie Yilong finally embarked on the road to fight for the throne. Xie Yilong's road to the throne was very smooth. He had an innate advantage as he was born from the Empress and he had outstanding military achievements, so at the end Xie Yilong plotted to frame his biological crown prince older brother and angered his biological mother to death, controlling his biological father and finally successfully obtained the throne of Emperor Shao Wu. In the road to fight for the throne, it was necessary to give up some things like family affection and love. Of course, to Xie Yilong, these were not important. He was an ambitious person, so at the end he married the daughter of the left minister Shao family. The Shao family was the head of the civil officials, and by marrying the daughter of the Shao family, one could almost rope in more than half of the Great Liang's civil officials. In addition, the daughter of the Shao family was born to be extremely beautiful, intelligent, and magnanimous. A smart beauty was never a loss. This marriage was actually extremely worthwhile. Therefore, after he ascended the throne, Emperor Xiaowu and Empress Jingxian treated each other with respect. Emperor Xiaowu was a wise ruler and Empress Jingxian was famous for her virtue. Not long after, Empress Jingxian gave birth to her eldest son, Xie Qi, who was made the crown prince. Originally, the Great Liang's territory was gradually expanding, and the country's power was also gradually taking the lead among the three countries. Everything looked very perfect. But in this world, the most difficult thing to retain was the unchanging. Those who go through thick and thin with you may not be able to share your prosperity. Empress Shao married Emperor Xiaowu at a time of chaos. Both husband and wife excelled in civil and military affairs. Xie Yilong was ambitious, Empress Shao was steady, Xie Yilong was clever, and Empress Shao was resourceful. But when the enemies outside gradually disappeared, the spearhead would be aimed at the people around them. Emperor Xiaowu was an ambitious person. When he first obtained the throne, he used tricks. Ambition came from desire. He gradually suspected that the Shao family had the intention of monopolizing power through their relatives. And the more virtuous and intelligent Empress Shao appeared, the more suspicious Emperor Xiaowu became. In order to balance the power of the Shao family, Emperor Xiaowu recruited a large harem. Among these, there were many aristocratic families that were against the Shao family. He promoted them, the previous court let the Shao family fight with them, and the harem let Empress Shao fight with the women of those aristocratic families. Chapter 1031. Empress Shao was intelligent and had always adhered to the family motto of treating her husband as her god after her marriage. In addition, Xie Yilong was an outstanding man and they got along well over the years. But those messy women gradually began to rack their brains to give birth to a prince and even began to threaten Xie position as crown prince. Empress Xiao finally could not sit back and do nothing. Every woman, even the weakest one, could turn into a ferocious beast in order to protect their children. Moreover, Empress Xiao was not a weak rabbit. As the most outstanding lady in the Xiao family, she naturally had her own brains. She began to fight back strongly. Empress Xiao's ability was not to be underestimated as she was able to survive the chaotic days with Emperor Xiaowu. How could those pampered women who only knew how to live a comfortable life be compared to her? They were just asking for humiliation. Xie was safe and sound while Empress Xiao won every battle. Her strength and intelligence greatly deterred those women, and for a while, no one dared to act rashly. However, as intelligent as Empress Xiao was, she also made a mistake. The more outstanding she was, the more Emperor Xiaowu felt uncomfortable. Emperor Xiaowu became more wary of her and even began to find ways to find her mistakes. In the beginning, he only found a few opponents for Empress Xiao in the back palace and coldly watched them fight. But in the end, he would subconsciously side with one side and everything Empress Xiao did was wrong. He began to directly and unhesitatingly suppress the Xiao family. Empress Xiao felt very sad, but she still believed that Xiaowu was her husband and everyone would make mistakes at some point in their lives. She only wanted to protect her position, let Xie grow up safely, and see Xie successfully inherit the throne of Great Liang. Who knew those women would try to harm Xie? During that period of time, Emperor Xiaowu suddenly warmed up to Empress Xiao. Empress Xiao did not know why, and not long after, Premier Xiao suddenly resigned. Xie Yilong was indeed a scheming man. Although the Xiao family was ruthless, they were not as ruthless as Xie Yilong. The Xiao family only had one empress in hundreds of years, and for this empress, the Xiao family did not hesitate to sacrifice themselves. When Empress Xiao learned of this, it was already too late. She only felt disgusted when she knew that those nights of tenderness were Xie Yilong's scheming actions. But she did not expect that she was pregnant. This child in her womb was different from Xie. It had come to this world under Xie Yilong's deliberate and hypocritical scheme. When Empress Xiao was pregnant, she often thought that if he was a son, he must not be like his father. He was ambitious and could come up with endless plots and schemes, but he could not casually take advantage of people's sincerity. That was the most despicable behavior, and also the most shameful. After she was pregnant, it was not convenient for Empress Xiao to fight for many things. But she did not expect that someone would take advantage of her at this time to hit on Xie. Xie was drugged. It was an extremely potent poison. If it weren't for the fact that the head of the Gao clan and Prime Minister Xiao were old friends, the head of the Gao clan would have personally taken action and Xie wouldn't have survived. Although he had lived past that time, the Gao family's patriarch had also asserted that the poison had already entered his intestines. He was merely stalling for time. Xie wouldn't live past 35 years old, and this poison would also affect his children. If Xie had children in the future, they would inevitably be born with congenital deficiencies or carry poison in their bodies. The head of the Gao clan was a rare divine physician in the world. If even he said so, Xie's fate was almost sealed. The other party came for Xie's life. Even if they did not want his life, they wanted to destroy his life. Chapter 1032. Empress Xiao did not expect that she, once the most outstanding daughter of the Xiao family, Empress Jingxian, who was famous for her virtue, would one day fall into such a state. In order to protect her, her family voluntarily withdrew from the Great Liang's officialdom. And of her two children, one became a cripple who could not live past the age of 40 due to a conspiracy, and the other was the fruit of a vicious plan. The poisoner was found, and it was Emperor Xiaowu's newly promoted favorite concubine. Empress Xiao tied the favorite concubine in the imperial garden, cut her flesh piece by piece, and watched as she breathed her last. At that time, all the palace maids and eunuchs in the imperial garden almost fainted while Empress Xiao felt it was rather boring. Emperor Xiaowu naturally scolded the favorite concubine and personally condemned her for her crimes, and even comforted Empress Xiao. Hearing his gentle words, Empress Xiao's heart was as cold as ice, but her mind was filled with wariness and vigilance. Did Emperor Xiaowu know about this? Empress Xiao felt that she and Emperor Xiaowu had been husband and wife for so many years, it was time to re-examine him. Even if Emperor Xiaowu did not know, this favorite concubine was originally promoted to deal with Empress Xiao. The son did not kill the benevolent, but the benevolent died because of me. On one hand, Empress Xiao was on guard, but on the other hand, she pretended to be sad that her son had met with this unexpected disaster. The news of Xie Qi's incurable poison was not spread out, but who knew if it would be known in the future? However, what Empress Xiao was most worried about was the future. The child in her belly was about to be born. Emperor Xiaowu disliked Xie Qi because of the Xiao family. If something happened to Xie Qi in the future, and if the child in her belly was a son, this child would replace Xie Qi's position and sit on the crown prince's seat. Who knows if it would be the next Xie Qi? If it was a daughter, Empress Xiao would not want her to stay in the palace and be manipulated by others, unable to control her own fate. The most important thing was that Empress Xiao was about to start her counterattack. After she gave birth to this child, she wanted to return the pain that the Xiao family, Xie Qi, and herself had suffered double. There would be many inconveniences with a newborn child, and she might even be controlled by others. So, she had to think of a way. Generally speaking, the crown prince who was replaced would be far away from everything that he should have obtained, while the crown prince would obtain things that did not belong to him. Empress Xiao handed over her infant child to her confidant and said, looking up to the high mountain, Jing Xing Xingji, his courtesy name is Jing Xing. If there comes a day when he grows up to be a man of indomitable spirit, he can use overt schemes, but never use a person's true heart. She hardened her heart and looked at her child for the last time before saying, send him away. 2 months and less than half a year's journey. From Longyi to the Ding capital, he ran like a dead horse all the way. That was the first time in Xie Yuan's life that he came into contact with this world, but what welcomed him was escape. In those days of escape, he opened his eyes wide, learned to speak, and learned to fight against the world. In the residence of the Marquis of Lin and in the Ding capital, Princess Yuqing was about to give birth. Empress Zhao's henchmen had followed Empress Zhao's order to send Xie Yuan to an ordinary rich family, far away from the disputes of the court. But on that day when the henchman was investigating on the streets, he accidentally found out that Princess Yuqing was about to give birth, and the child's name had already been decided, Jing Xing. The henchman thought that this was really a coincidence. That night, the wind and rain were bitter and there was a heavy downpour in the Ding capital. The rainwater diluted the blood that was spilled in the courtyard, diluted the woman's painful moans, and also diluted the baby's weak cries. Chapter 1033. That child with the surname Xie and name Jing Xing, who was fated with Xie Yuan, died before he was born. The confidant who was carrying the infant hesitated for a moment but made a decision that made him rejoice for the rest of his life. He changed Xie Yuan to Xie Jing Xing, and from then on, Jing Xing's name was no longer a character. He was the little heir of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and carried Empress Zhao's expectations and Princess Yuqing's expectations to live well in this world. Not long after, the initially chosen wealthy family in the Ding capital was exterminated in one night. One did not know why, but the insiders knew that Emperor Xiaowu finally discovered some clues and traveled thousands of miles to silence them. One did not know if it was fortunate or unfortunate, but because of the confidant's mistake, Xie Jing Xing managed to avoid this life and death calamity. It was as if it was destined to be good. That residence of the Marquis of Lin was also filled with filthy matters. Madame Fang and her 2 sons continued to cause trouble, and the only thing that Xie Jing Xing could rely on was Xie Ding's favor. But Xie Ding's favor was not necessarily a good thing. Xie Ding was not in the residence for many years, and Xie Jing Xing was a young son, and it was already difficult for him to survive in the mouths of the jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards. If not for Empress Zhao's confidant secretly helping him, one feared that he would have become a pile of yellow soil and meet the real heir of the residence of the Marquis of Linen. Not only that, the Emperor of Mingqi secretly suppressed the Xie family. In such an environment, Xie Jing Xing gradually grew up. He was thankful that the confidant placed him in such a cruel environment so that he would not be too unaccustomed to the rugged road ahead. He was frivolous and had a sloppy smile as he lazily rode the horse through the streets and alleys of the Ding capital. He was unbearably stubborn and gave one a headache, but as Empress Xiao expected, he grew up to be a man of indomitable spirit and a man who could fight against an entire region. He had never used other people's feelings before. On the surface, he casually ridiculed but respected every sincerity. Towards Princess Rong Exin, towards Su Mingfeng, towards the Marquis of Lin and towards Shen Miao. He lived very well in the Ding capital of Mingqi, and just by relying on himself, he had the ability to secretly compete with the enemy. What about Empress Xiao? In those years, Empress Xiao missed her youngest son and grieved for her eldest son's encounter and decided to fight back. Aren't you most afraid that the country would fall into the Xiao family's hands? Isn't that what you care about the most? I will take it from your hands and trample it under my feet. At that time, will you feel a trace of regret for what you have done today? Empress Xiao was the daughter of the Xiao family. She was as resourceful as a man. While she was still feeling more energetic due to her anger, Emperor Xiaowu was starting to age. The imperial concubines in the harem distracted him, and his ambition gradually faded away after he thought he could rest easy. Adversity begets adversity and perishes in ease. When Emperor Xiaowu died, only Empress Xiao was by his side. Empress Xiao said, "Your Majesty, don't worry. You and I are husband and wife. I won't let you be too lonely on the road to hell. All the women and concubines in the palace that you have favored, this Jie will have them accompany you. And your children, other than the crown prince, this Jie will not miss a single one." Emperor Xiaowu's eyes widened. Also, Empress Xiao seemed to have thought of something and leaned over to his ear. "Our youngest son is also doing well. In the beginning your Majesty sent people to pursue and kill him to Mingqi, but they killed the wrong person. After a few more years, when the court has settled down, this Jie will bring him back to acknowledge his ancestry. The great Liang's country must be inherited by someone. This Jie is soft-hearted, so the brothers are still surnamed Xiao. If this Jie was as hard-hearted as your Majesty, then the great Liang's country would really change dynasties. Your Majesty have a good journey. This country, this Jie will keep it first." Empress Xiao stood in front of the bed and smiled warmly. Emperor Xiaowu died with remaining grievances. Empress Jingxian became Empress Dowager Jingxian. Xie Qi became Emperor Yongle. Xie Jingxing was still in Mingqi's Ding capital, groping along the dark road. He muddle-headedly found out about his life experience, but was warned that his biological father was chasing after him and his biological mother trapped his biological father to death. Now that the wind and waves were at their peak, one must not act rashly. Due to a freak combination of factors, Empress Jingxian really did as she said and cleaned up the great Liang's inner palace cleanly. Those who were once domineering towards them, mother and son, finally became Emperor Xiaowu's companions on the road to the Yellow Springs. She said to Xie Qi, who had become Emperor Yongle, "Ijia is old and cannot manage so many matters outside, but a clean inner palace is something that Ijia can give you. From now on, there will be no villains in the inner palace. You only need to promise Ijia one thing, to hold this country firmly in your hands and never let it decline." The Lu and Yi families were Emperor Xiaowu's confidants and were extremely cunning. A centipede would not fall down even if it died. Because of the complexity of the forces, it was not easy to uproot them. Thus Emperor Yongle had been secretly planning to deal with these two families. Empress Dowager Jingxian passed away 2 years later. When she was reading the Lu family's memorial, she suddenly fell down and never woke up. The Gao family said that it was because she was mentally and physically exhausted and was like a lamp that had run out of oil. But the day before, she was still talking to Emperor Yongle about changing the style of the ceremony this year, and perhaps think of a way to make Xie Jingxing return to the Great Liang. Things were unpredictable. In this lifetime, she finally did not have the chance to reunite with Xie Yuan. Thus they were separated forever. Chapter 1034. Empress Jingxian's entire life was most likely very legendary. From the most pampered daughter of the Prime Minister to the Empress, she experienced the separation of husband and wife, frame-up and the separation of mother and son. But at the end, a tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye, The inner palace of the great Liang was cleanly dealt with, which made one extremely happy. She was the type of person who became more and more unwilling in adversity. If one were to talk about regrets, the first was that Xie Qi's poison could not be cured, and the second was that she was unable to meet Xie Yuan again. The two brothers, Xie Qi and Xie Yuan, were more like Empress Xiao. In the beginning, Empress Xiao was a great beauty sought after by everyone in Longyi, and it was not an exaggeration to say that she was a stunning beauty. And Xie Qi and Xie Yuan not only inherited Empress Xiao's beauty but also her methods. Because Xie Qi was in the imperial family, there were some shadows of Emperor Xiao Wu. For example, when he was playing politics, he had to use the power of marriage in order to balance the various forces. But Xie Yuan was different. He was far away in Mingqi and was in opposition with the imperial family. He did not have a trace of Xie Yilong's shadow, and he had indeed done what Empress Xiao had expected of him. Even though he was not considered a good person, he was definitely not a despicable person. Shen Miao did not think that Xie Jingxing's life was so tortuous and bizarre. Towards Empress Jingxian's life, she could not help but admire her. Empress Jingxian was so similar to her in her previous life, but at the end, she was able to become the winner of this country. But Shen Miao knew that she could not be like Empress Xiao, who had the determination to cut off one's wrist and endure the pain of one's flesh and blood being separated. Seeing her complicated eyes, Xie Jingxing smiled unconcernedly. "No need to pity me. I have never seen her before and naturally do not have any attachment to her." He was a young man who grew up alone in the storm and was chased by his biological father since birth and had never seen his biological mother before. But it created a more open-minded state of mind than ordinary people. No matter how many things were in his eyes, it was just a smile. But he did not care much about other people's feelings because he did not have any expectations of others from the start. Shen Miao was silent for a moment before saying, "I will accompany you to the end." Xie Jingxing's eyes moved slightly before his lips hooked up into a smile. "Since you sympathize with me, why not compensate me?" His smirk instantly swept away the somewhat sentimental atmosphere that had just been a moment ago. Shen Miao glared at him and suddenly thought of something. But in this case, His Majesty's illness? She did not continue speaking. Since the Gao clan said that Xie Qi wouldn't live past the age of 35, how many years did Emperor Yongle have left? Imperial older brother has already passed his 36th birthday this year. Xie Jingxing said, "It can be seen that one's assertions are not accurate at times. However," he said with a cold expression, "Imperial brother's health is getting worse." "Do the Lu and Yi family know of this matter?" Shen Miao asked. "I heard that after Emperor Xiaowu's death, my mother had silenced all the people in the palace who knew about it. Now, the only people who know about my brother's illness are the master of the Gao family, you, me, and my sister-in-law." Shen Miao's heart jumped as she thought that Empress Jingxian's methods were indeed fierce, but it also solved a lot of worries. Then did the Empress know of his illness before marrying to the Emperor, or was it after marrying to the Emperor? Shen Miao asked. Xie Jingxing looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. "What do you want to ask?" Shen Miao thought that if Empress Xiande knew that Emperor Yongle would not live past the age of 35, would she still marry Emperor Yongle? After all, it was not an easy thing to be a widow at such a young age. But if one only knew about it after marrying in, would one not be deceived for a lifetime? Chapter 1035. If it was you, what would you choose? Xie Jingxing asked. Shen Miao said, "When I married you, I did not like you to the point of being willing to be a widow for you." Finishing those words, she revealed a vexed expression, thinking that this was cursing Xie Jingxing. But when Xie Jingxing heard it, he was very happy and pulled her over, pressing Shen Miao's head into his embrace and said with a smile, "Oh, meaning that now you like me to the point of being a widow for me?" Not waiting for Shen Miao to answer, he said thoughtfully, "So to speak, when you married me, you also admired me." "Who admired you?" Shen Miao was pressed into his embrace and could not breathe as she spoke in a flustered and exasperated manner. But she heard Xie Jingxing's leisurely voice ringing from the top of her head. "If you like me, then just say it." I have always had tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex and would definitely not bear to let you be a widow at such a young age. Shen Miao did not get angry but instead laughed and retorted, "Be a widow? Do not worry, there are not many females in this world that would obediently be widows. There are many disputes in front of a widow and there are many small brothels in Longyi." Now that she was brought up by Xie Jingxing, she no longer put on airs like before and would occasionally anger Xie Jingxing half to death. Sure enough, when he heard that, Xie Jingxing's actions paused and stared at her carefully before speaking gently, "Want to look for Xiaoyu?" His tone was gentle but Shen Miao felt an inexplicable chill at the back of her neck. Without waiting for her to speak, Xie Jingxing suddenly carried her up and stood up before striding towards the bedside, scaring Shen Miao so much that she screamed, but Xie Jingxing was unperturbed as he said, "You remind me to work hard, so naturally this husband would not dare to be lazy." Tai Yi, who was guarding outside, was caught off guard by the movements of the husband and wife until his old face turned red. He did not know whether to leave or stay as his black face turned red, making it look very interesting. The husband and wife panted for a while before they finally stopped. Shen Miao used Xie Jingxing's arm as a pillow and pushed him to ask, "You have not answered my question previously. Does Her Majesty the Empress know or not? Imperial sister-in-law is such a smart woman. If she doesn't know that she was tricked into marrying into this family, it will be a big problem." Xie Jingxing sighed. When Imperial Mother was choosing a wife for Imperial older brother, she once called Imperial Saw into the palace and said some words. Mother hates people who take advantage of people's sincerity the most. Even if it's to balance the power, she will let the other party take responsibility. Shen Miao said, knowing but still marrying in. The Empress really likes His Majesty the Emperor. Xie Jingxing did not speak. Empress Xianda's maiden family was an aristocratic family of scholars. In terms of real power, many aristocratic families could not compare to them. But in the end, Empress Dowager Jingxian chose Empress Xianda to be Emperor Yongla's wife. This was because Empress Xianda's maiden family, the chief scribe's residence, was absolutely loyal. Empress Xianda was just like her title, gentle, honest, intelligent, and generous. Empress Dowager Jingxian was different from Emperor Xiaowu. Emperor Yongla could promote other concubines to balance the power, but he only had one wife and this one wife was to be with him for life. One's character was even more important. She was able to share weal and woe with others in riches and was a real lady from a noble family. She was able to withstand the wind and waves and was able to suppress the brocade. Empress Xianda's maiden family was a loyal and honest person. As for whether Empress Xianda had feelings for Emperor Yongla or not, this was not known. After all, it was a luxury to talk about true feelings in the imperial family. But Empress Xianda had always been calm about the matter of Emperor Yongla not living to the age of 35. Shen Miao said, if it is only for power, she should plan for herself. Xie Jingxing smiled. Imperial sister-in-law is very smart and not greedy. Chapter 1036. It was best to not be greedy. Many tragedies were traced back to a single word, greed. They were greedy for power, glory, splendor and wealth, or greedy for affection. Shen Miao thought for a moment before saying, now that Consort Jing is pregnant, how do you plan to deal with the Lu family? Xie Jingxing played with Shen Miao's long hair and casually said, what does Lu Jing's pregnancy have to do with us? Water can carry a boat or overturn it. The Lu family thought that they could rest easy with the dragon seed, but in fact they were wrong. With an emperor with dragon seed, some of the opposing people would naturally change sides. How many of the Lu family soldiers are fence-sitters? They can lean towards the Lu family and also lean towards the imperial family. Shen Miao looked at him. It cannot be just this point, right? Xie Jingxing raised his brows. You think? After preparing for so long, it is clear that Consort Jing's pregnancy was an accident. You did not expect this at the beginning. Shen Miao said, if Consort Jing was not pregnant, how do you plan to deal with the Lu family? Simple. Xie Jingxing said, ever since imperial older brother ascended the throne, he had been planning to deal with the Lu and Yi families. For so many years he had been searching for the evidence of the Lu family's army. Now that the collection is more or less complete, it is time to reveal it. At that time, the mouths of the world can be sealed. This is one of the reasons. Secondly, Xie Jingxing said, even though the Lu family's army is powerful in the Great Liang, it is not that there are no other generals. Those generals have almost become imperial older brothers people in private, and also the Mou army had been accumulating strength. Now the matter is much simpler. Either the evidence is shown, or the Lu family pleads guilty. Lu Jingchun had been arrogant his entire life and would definitely not plead guilty and would turn against the imperial family. It is just nice to catch them all in one fell swoop. When Shen Miao heard him say that, she thought that Xie Jingxing and Emperor Yonglu were indeed brothers. The way they dealt with people was not at all roundabout and was very simple and crude but also effective. Perhaps this was also inherited from Empress Xiao? She said, if it is like this, then why the need to prepare for so many years? One would be able to contend at the beginning. If one started early, then there would be a lot of time left. Xie Jingxing leaned close to her ear and said, young lady, you need to know that our Xie family's men do not like to be sloppy and do not like to be evenly matched. If we want to do it, we will pull it up by the roots. The Lu family's roots are too deep. The earlier we start, the harder it will be to clean them up. Now that the time is ripe, isn't it good to pull them out cleanly? Shen Miao frowned and heard from Xie Jingxing, I know that you like to gamble deep in your bones. In the beginning when you were alone and weak, you dared to scheme against Prince Yu of the first rank, but it is too dangerous and the possibility of self-harm is too high. I do not like it. He said, a Pyrrhic victory with too many sacrifices is also a defeat. Shen Miao had to admit that what Xie Jingxing said was very reasonable. In the beginning she dared to confront Prince Yu of the first rank and even Fu Xiuyi. It was because she was fighting alone and used a stone to hit the jade wares. The one that was injured the most was ultimately the jade wares. Afterwards, as the Shen family was gradually involved, she had to take into account many things and could not be as free as before. And this time for Xie Jingxing, if they were evenly matched in strength, the longer it dragged on, the one who would suffer losses would be the Great Liang's commoners. If one had enough strength like now, it would be easy to wipe out the Lu family in one fell swoop and the sacrifices would be reduced to a minimum. But since the Lu family is like this, what about the Yi family? Shen Miao still had doubts and hesitated to speak, but in the end she hesitated to speak. Previously, Imperial older brother planned to rope in the Yi family since the Yi family does not have any heirs and only have a young master who is not good at walking and would not be able to stir up any waves. Xie Jingxing said, but since you told me about your dream, Yi Mei and younger brother are enemies. How can enemies be roped in? That would be seeking one's own destruction. He said, do not worry. I will help you take revenge. Chapter 1037. Shen Miao was silent for a long time before softly saying, thank you. To make the other party change a plan that had been planned for a long time, it was not just a matter of words. Everything related to this plan had to be replanned. Not to mention how troublesome it would be, the most frightening thing about a plan was that there would be variables. However, Xie Jingxing was willing to bear all the possible consequences for her. How lucky was she to meet such a person in this lifetime? Xie Jingxing saw that her expression was strange and hooked Shen Miao's chin to make her lift her head up. After a careful look, he said, why are you so moved to this state? Why not use your body to repay me? Shen Miao pushed him and scolded, what nonsense are you talking about? How do you plan to deal with the Yi family? Xie Jingxing thought for a moment and said, this is not difficult. Since the Yi family cannot be part of our imperial family, naturally they are in cahoots with the Lu family. Find the evidence of the Lu and Yi family's private dealings. If the Lu family is in trouble, the Yi family would also be unlucky. Aren't you very smart? How come you don't even know how to frame others? Shen Miao looked at him dumbfoundedly. Xie Jingxing was actually able to say the crime of framing others in such a dignified manner that those who did not know would think that he had done something indomitable. And to frame the prime minister of a country was not such a simple matter. The Yi family is actually easier to deal with than the Lu family. The Yi family is just complicated with the civil officials in the court, but once the Lu family is unlucky, the Yi family would be implicated. As long as the civil officials are not fools, they would draw a clear line with the Yi family. After so many years, the two trusted aides that Emperor Xiao Wu left behind have their strength worn down and are not as glorious as they were in the past. Shen Miao thought about it and said, "It is not that their strength has been worn down, but that your strength has grown to the point where you do not need to be restrained by them." The cub had finally grown into the king of beasts, so it was time to clean up those clowns in the forest. Xie Jingxing looked at her and teased, "You respect me this much?" Shen Miao said without any expression, "It is respect, it is respect. Since foreign is so supportive, then one must serve foreign well." Xie Jingxing solemnly said and turned over to press Shen Miao under him. Shen Miao, in the Yi residence. Yi Mei and Yi Ku were talking in the room. Yi Maokai prided himself on being a scholar, so the furnishings in his room were naturally very elegant. There were paintings and orchids everywhere, but upon closer inspection, the paintings and orchids were all treasured works by famous masters, and the orchids were also high-grade flowers. Even the paperweight on the table was expensive. It could be seen that the Yi family was indeed wealthy. Scholars were true, but poor scholars were not necessarily true. There were exquisite desserts on the table. Yi Mei wore a bright yellow silk robe with lotus flowers inlaid with crystals and a long skirt. Whether it was the material or the workmanship, these clothes were of the best quality. Her appearance was already outstanding, and with this outfit, even the nobles in the palace would pale in comparison. She had a natural charm and was very charming and beautiful. Yi Ku sat opposite her. His clothes were as simple as before, but the fabric was of a higher level. Clearly, in the Yi family, the two of them were living quite well. "Sis, what did you mean by that?" Yi Ku asked with a frown. Yi Mei picked up the tea on the table and took a sip before lightly saying, "Previously when Yi Furen was looking for a daughter, she kept insisting that I am her daughter. This matter was too chaotic and one did not know if it was true or false. But at least we have found a good place to go. After father and mother died, the shops could no longer be taken care of. Moreover, it is much better to be an official's daughter than a merchant's daughter. It is the same for you. With Prime Minister Yi as your father, your career will be smoother." Chapter 1038. Yi Ku smiled bitterly. "Of course I know this, but didn't Yi Maokai not believe in our identities?" Yi Mei and Yi Ku didn't believe that there was such a thing as a pie falling from the sky. But ever since the Yi clan came looking for their kin, the two siblings had no choice but to believe that there was such a good thing in this world. Rumor had it that more than 10 years ago, when Madame Yi was giving birth, she was instigated by a traitor, causing her daughter to wander outside. Finally, they found Yi Mei. Was this true? Yi Mei thought that this was definitely not true, because she and Yi Ku were born at the same time. However, people would always be paranoid. For example, Madame Yi, who looked very normal, insisted that Yi Mei was her daughter. No matter how she tried to persuade her, she refused to listen. She even insisted on bringing Yi Ku into the Yi mansion because of her relationship with Yi Mei. Yi Mei and her brother were on high alert. Later, Yi Maokai also came to see them. Yi Maokai was much more clear-headed than Madame Yi. He went straight to the point and said that the Yi siblings weren't Madame Ye's children. However, because of Madame Ye's insistence, Yi Maokai didn't want to stop her. For the sake of Madame Ye's health, he was willing to hide this lie and give the Yi siblings the identity of the Yi family's children. What kind of person was Yi Mei? She was incomparably astute. Without knowing the pros and cons, she naturally did not dare to jump into the fire pit. She thought of ways to inquire about the Yi family's situation and found out that the Yi family was in a delicate position with the royal family. In addition, the Yi family only had a young master who could not walk and could be considered to have no successor. Yi Maokai naturally needed a pair of children to shut the mouths of the world, mutually benefiting, each taking what they needed. A cripple couldn't stir up any big waves. Wouldn't the wealth of the Yi residents fall into Yi Ku's hands in the end? And with the Yi family's name, if Yi Mei wanted to marry into a noble family in the future, it would be a matter of course. Even if Yi Maokai had other ideas, the siblings were not fools. They would naturally think of ways to get what they wanted. Therefore, the Yi siblings entered the Yi mansion and became the Yi family's young miss and young master. Madame Yi trusted them and Yi Maokai guarded against them. This made no difference to the Yi siblings. The Yi family was just a springboard, a backer that could help them walk faster in the future. Yi Mei said, "It doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. You and I are both businessmen, so just treat him as a businessman. It's just that this deal seems to be a loss. I didn't expect things to turn out like this." Yi Mei said, "Before, I thought the Yi family was strong in Long Yi. Yi Mei's phone, Yi Mei's Maokai, Yi family, families, Yi family sect. However, in recent days, I feel that something is wrong. The Yi family is not as good as I thought. It seems to be in imminent danger. If we take a step forward, we will be able to live without worries. However, if we don't do well, we will fall into a bottomless abyss and suffer a double loss." When Yi Ke heard this, his expression also became somewhat ugly. He said, "You mean, the Yi family's current situation is very dangerous?" "I don't know if it's dangerous." Yi Mei sneered. "Yi Maokai, that old fox, hid it well and refused to let us know the Yi family's situation. Although Madame Yi trusts me, she trusts Yi Maokai even more. It is harder than ascending to heaven to get information out of her. But the more it is like this, the more uneasy I feel. I feel that the Yi residence is not good." "Maybe you are thinking too much." Yi Ke thought about it and shook his head. "The Yi family is the prime minister of the Great Liang. How could it reach the step you said? As for the Yi family being wary of us, it is probably because the time is too short. After all, we are all in the same boat. Otherwise, when you suggested to assassinate Rui Wangfei, the Yi family would not have agreed so easily. It is a pity that Rui Wangfei was lucky and was saved by that scholar, escaping a calamity." Chapter 1039. Yi Mei's eyes congealed before she suddenly laughed. "She really has a good life and really good luck." "But older sister." Yi Ke looked at her. "In the beginning, why did you let the Yi family kill Princess Rui? Was it really because you wanted to enter the residence of Prince Rui? One always feel that this decision was made in a hurry and without much consideration." Yi Mei paused and thought for a while before saying, "If I say that the first time I saw her, I felt that I do not want her to live in this world, would you believe it?" Yi Ke was startled for a moment, but Yi Mei was still deep in thought. When she just came to Long Yi with the Yi family, it was just as Xie Yuan had returned from hunting in the imperial city. Yi Maokai gave her the antidote and wanted her to pretend that she had inadvertently opened the bounty list to save him. Naturally, the Yi family could take out the antidote and most likely Prince Rui's injury was related to them. If Yi Mei used the identity of a Yi family member to save him, it would be hard to avoid suspicion from the Yi family. It would be better to say that she was looking for relatives, and it would be more logical to find out that she was from the Yi family. Yi Maokai wanted to use Yi Mei to connect to the residence of Prince Rui. Yi Mei was born beautiful and was also Xie Yuan's savior. The longer she stayed in the residence of Prince Rui, the more natural some things would happen. At that time, Yi Mei saw Prince Rui Xie Yuan. Towards men, Yi Mei could not say that she loved or did not love them. She had ambitions and means, and men were tools to achieve her goals. If there was a better one, she would change to another one. To her, it was like a beautiful person needed to be matched with gorgeous clothes, precious jewelry, and a rich residence. Naturally, she needed a noble husband. Xie Yuan was the best one she had seen since she grew up. He had a high position of power at a young age and was also born with a romantic beauty. Even if he was lying quietly, he had a natural noble air and attracted the attention of others. Not to mention that Yi Mei had heard from Yi Maokai that Xie Yuan was a very powerful person with many means. It was normal for her to want such a good person for herself, and Xie Yuan's indifference made her want to conquer him. She heard that Xie Yuan had a princess, but Yi Mei had never seen her before. Knowing that that woman was the daughter of a Ming-Chi military general, she did not think much of it. The daughter of a military general was unbearably vulgar and came here alone without any backing. Yi Mei did not even feel that the other person had the qualifications to be her opponent. Until the moment she saw Shen Miao. Shen Miao's clothes were still somewhat muddy and her hair was untidy. Her face was also travel-worn, but she stood in front of Yi Mei against the light. Her posture was dignified, as if she was an overbearing beast declaring her sovereignty. It was obvious that Yi Mei was the brightest and Shen Miao was in a difficult situation. But at that moment, Yi Mei had an absurd feeling that even if she used all her strength, she wouldn't be able to snatch anything from the woman in front of her. In the days that followed, Shen Miao was rather cold towards her, and occasionally Yi Mei could feel a faint disgust and hatred. But since ancient times, a woman's feelings were all relative. Not only did Shen Miao feel uncomfortable with her, Yi Mei also felt uncomfortable with Shen Miao. One heard that Shen Miao had parents who doted on her, eldest brother who cared for her, good friends and sisters, and also Xie Yuan who doted on her. Although it was the Cold War, the bystanders knew best. If there was no love, why would there be a Cold War? It was clear that he loved her to the bone. That was why his every move would involve his own emotions. The more she compared, the more unwilling Yi Mei felt. Why should all the good things in this world be enjoyed by Shen Miao alone? She had an aloof temperament and did not know how to act coquettishly, so how could she obtain Xie Yuan's favor? What she was most unwilling to accept was that people who were inferior to her lived better than her. Yi Mei was jealous and disgusted. She loved to snatch other people's things and make those things her own. But it seemed that it would be very difficult to snatch Shen Miao's things. Then what should be done? It would be better to let Shen Miao disappear. So Yi Mei told Yi Maokai that only if Shen Miao died and Xie Yuan's Wangfei position was empty, she was confident that she could grasp Xie Yuan's heart. Rather than saying that Yi Mei wanted to snatch Xie Yuan, it would be better to say that Yi Mei could not see Shen Miao living better than her. Yi Mei was not willing to lose to Shen Miao. Yi Maokai originally wanted Yi Mei to climb up to Prince Rui's residence and finally agreed. But who would have thought that Shen Miao did not die and that there was someone who was willing to protect Shen Miao without hesitation? Moreover, because of the Yi family's rash actions, Xie Yuan seemed to have some suspicions and kept a close eye on the Yi family. Yi Maokai even vented his anger on Yi Mei. In Yi Mei's entire life, she had never failed in the things she wanted. She used all kinds of people that she could use and had always been smooth sailing. Snatching other people's things was also very handy. No matter if it was an object or a person, or even a person's heart. But she hit a wall with Shen Miao. She could not snatch Shen Miao's man, nor could she snatch Shen Miao's life, and even more could she not snatch Shen Miao's good luck. Chapter 1040. Now one heard that Prince Rui and Princess Rui have a deep relationship. Yiku said, a few days ago one heard that both of them held hands and roamed around Longyi City. It can be seen that Prince Rui loves Shen Miao to the bones. Speaking of which, that Shen Miao's appearance is not as good as yours, one do not know how the other party is so dead set on her. Yiku looked at Yi Mei, older sister, do you still want to enter the residence of Prince Rui? Yi Mei was somewhat distraught. She could not display her advantage in front of Xie Yuan at all. Initially in Qinzhou, if she wanted to use any man, naturally she would be invincible. But facing Xie Yuan, she always felt that she did not know where to start. Xie Yuan did not pay attention to her at all. Yi Mei could feel that Xie Yuan's gaze on her was no different from looking at Lu Wanner, and was no different from all the young ladies of official families in Mingqi. She felt that she could not conquer Xie Yuan because Xie Yuan did not see her as a woman. Thinking of this, Yi Mei said in an evasive manner, let's talk about it later. Yi Maokai did not mention the matter for the time being, so there is no need to think about it. The most urgent matter is to find out what is wrong with the Yi family. If the Yi family is unlucky one day, you and I cannot be implicated, so it is better to make plans early. Actually, Yi hemmed and hawed. Previously Yi Maokai looked for me once and had the intention to let you enter the palace. Enter the palace? Yi Mei's eyebrows jumped and she suddenly laughed. She laughed in a flirtatious manner, but there was a meaningful feeling. Yi Maokai saw that Xie Yuan was not easy to hook up with and let me climb up to the imperial family? Enter the palace. Naturally it was not an ordinary palace, but to enter the palace to be the emperor's woman. Yi Mei sneered. There is no air in the palace, so there must be something fishy. If I enter the palace and do not have an heir, one would have no one to rely on after 100 years. If the emperor dies, would one have to be buried with him? Yi Maokai only has the idea of befriending the imperial family. No matter if I live or die, I will not return to the palace. Let him break this thought. At the end of the words, there was a sinister meaning. It wasn't that Yi Mei hadn't thought of entering the palace, but she had always been good at analyzing the pros and cons. Now that the emperor didn't have a son, it was probably the emperor's own problem. How long could a woman without a son live in the inner palace? Not to mention the harem, even if it was the backyard of a wealthy family, without a son, the only outcome would be death, or a lifetime of living in peace. This was not what Yi Mei wanted. She wanted to climb up, keep climbing up, and enjoy power. These were more important than being a woman who entered the palace and became an emperor. Yi Ku said awkwardly, I also guessed that you thought so I immediately told Yi Maokai that it was impossible. Yi Mei glanced at him and lightly said, You really told him that? Yi Ku avoided Yi Mei's gaze and said, Sister, you still don't believe me? Yi Mei smiled, but no one knew what that smile meant. She said, In short, you and I have to be clear about our identities. The Yi family isn't our real family, and the Yi family isn't family either. Moreover, family members have their own selfish motives. I will think of a way to figure out what exactly happened to the Yi family and what they plan to do. If one day the Yi family is unlucky, the two of us shouldn't fall into it. The best plan is to retreat unscathed. Sister, it's not that serious. Yi Ku disagreed. If it really was that serious, the Yi family would have already started looking for a way out for themselves. Yi Mei laughed coldly. I'm afraid that the Yi family doesn't even know that a disaster is imminent. As they spoke, they heard someone call from outside the door. Big sister, second brother. Yi Ku went forward to open the door and saw a manservant pushing Yi Hongguang outside. Although Yi Maokai was shrewd, he treated his crippled son well. He ordered people to specially make a chair that could move for him and let the manservant push it so that he could walk around the Yi residence. However, Madame Yi didn't like the son of this concubine who was raised under her name. Chapter 1041. Yi Hongguang liked Yi Mei and Yi Ku very much. He probably felt that the Yi Fu had been quiet for many years. Suddenly having siblings come, he was always happy. His personality was also very pure, like a child. He didn't seem to have been raised by the Yi family. But thinking about it, he never left the Fu. Other than playing chess with Yi Maokai, he only read. It was natural to have such a pure personality. Yi Mei smiled and asked, Does third brother have something? Yi Hongguang didn't look like Yi Maokai, nor did he look like Yi Madam. He probably looked more like that concubine who had passed away. His features were very delicate. He also smiled and said, Father wants you to go to the study. I came to deliver the 9 chain rings to Dejie on the way. I heard that Dejie is an expert in solving the 9 chain rings, so I brought it over. Yi Mei took the 9 chain rings and said, When I solve it, I will personally deliver it to third brother. Thank you, Dejie. Yi Hongguang seemed very excited. Yi Mei smiled faintly and turned to look at Yi Ku. They both saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. At this time, Yi Maokai called the two of them into the study. It was clear that there was something new for them to do. Using the two of them as chess pieces, but would Yi Mei and the others be obedient and let others do as they pleased? It would definitely be another round of guessing, and I would fight. The news of Jing Fei's pregnancy spread throughout all of Longyi the next day. Emperor Yonglu had been childless for so many years, and naturally there were all sorts of speculations. The most common one was that Emperor Yonglu was suffering from a hidden illness and was unable to have children of his own. It was precisely because of this that the open and secret struggles in the imperial court had never stopped. But Jing Fei was pregnant. This meant a lot more. It most likely wasn't Emperor Yongli's problem. Maybe Emperor Yongle had purposefully done it. But now that Emperor Yongle had made Jing Fei pregnant, it seemed to explain some problems. Therefore, the court officials started to move again, wanting to send the daughter of the Fu into the palace. On the other side, some of Longye's court officials that were neutral and had a wait-and-see attitude started to make new decisions. No matter what, Jing Fei's pregnancy had a great impact on the Hogong of the Great Liang court. When Shen Miao talked about the matter to Xie Jingxing, she said, previously because the emperor did not have any children, the inner palace was peaceful and there were not many disputes. But once the news of consort Jing's pregnancy spread out, all the ministers wanted to send their daughters into the palace and rushed to give birth. One fear that the inner palace would be in chaos. A pool of calm water suddenly stirred up by a stone thrown into it was the scariest thing. Xie Jingxing smiled. That would also need to be able to give birth. Emperor Yongle had all of them drink birth control soup. Jing Fei was an accident, but because of this accident, the palace would definitely be stricter in this area in the future and wouldn't let anyone find any loopholes. But the Lu family is too impatient. Shen Miao propped her chin up. Before the palace spread it out, it was already spread out. The entire Long Yi knows about it now. The faster one wears, the faster one will die. Xie Jingxing was wearing his outer robes when Shen Miao stood up to help him tidy his collar. He looked down at Shen Miao and said, "But if you are pregnant with my child, I will also let others spread it to everyone in Long Yi." Shen Miao glared at him fiercely. "If you dare to let other females be pregnant with your child?" What? Xie Jingxing frowned. Shen Miao pulled his collar harshly and said fiercely, "The matter of the entire household of Prince Ray being exterminated will be spread to everyone in Long Yi." Xie Jingxing laughed out loud and held her waist before whispering ambiguously in her ear, "One fear that it will not work if one is exhausted with a fierce wife at home." Chapter 1042. Valiant. Shen Miao was about to get angry. Xie Jingxing still wanted to say something when octagonal voice was heard from outside. "Master, friend, the horse carriage is ready. Shall we depart now?" Shen Miao released her hands and said, "Come back first before talking." Xie Jingxing smiled evilly in the midst of chaos. "You can pick as you please." Shen Miao, get lost. They wanted to enter the palace. These few days Xie Jingxing frequently ran to the palace and should be discussing with Emperor Yongle about how to deal with the Lu family. The Lu family most likely felt the pressure and started to arrange their troops. On the other hand, they felt that consort Jing was pregnant and Emperor Yongle would definitely not do anything to the Lu family. On one hand, they were suspicious and on the other hand, they firmly believed that the Lu family was in a mess and it was the imperial family's intention. Various forces started to arrange and Xie Jingxing appeared to be exceptionally busy. Shen Miao also guessed the current and future situation of Ming Qi from the letter that Pei Lang left behind and at the same time helped the Shen family to escape from Fu Xiuyi's surveillance. Today Shen Miao also planned to enter the palace to see Empress Xianda and coincidentally Xie Jingxing also wanted to enter the palace so both husband and wife went together. Upon reaching the palace, Xie Jingxing went to the imperial study to see Emperor Yongle. Shen Miao wanted to see Empress Xianda and Tao Gugu led her there. Shen Miao saw that the path was covered with carpets and there were more palace maids walking in the palace. She felt it was strange and asked what was going on. Tao Gugu said, "This was instructed by consort Jing." Fearing that one would injure the child while walking, there were more palace maids than usual. These days the womb was tormented up and down. The Empress was kind and could not be bothered to argue with her, but she almost turned the inner palace upside down. Tao Gugu was Empress Xianda's female official and did not need to care about what she said. Because of her relationship with Empress Xianda, she treated Shen Miao as one of her own and did not conceal her disgust towards consort Jing. She said, "He didn't do anything too excessive, but he was very annoying and made me feel unhappy." Shen Miao raised her eyebrows and asked, "Then what is the emperor's attitude?" Tao Gugu smiled strangely. The emperor did not change his attitude towards consort Jing because of this child, and it was because consort Jing was sulking so she came up with so many tricks. She then thought of something and said, "Today, the young miss and young master of the Yi family also entered the palace. The young miss of the Yi family also came to visit Jing Fei. She's probably in Jinghua Palace. Qin Wangfei didn't see anyone from the Yi family when she entered the palace?" "Yi family?" Shen Miao shook her head. "I did not see it." But her heart was thinking. The Yi family's young miss and young master naturally referred to Yi Mei and Yi Ku. Yi Mei and Yi Ku came to see Jing Fei? The Lu family and the Yi family did not have a particularly close relationship to begin with. How could it have reached this point? Suddenly coming to see Jing Fei, she most likely had ulterior motives. Was she planning something? But to let Yi Mei talk to Jing Fei, not to mention Yi Mei, Jing Fei was stupid. How could she bear such a great responsibility? I'm afraid the Yi family has found the wrong person. She vaguely felt that something was wrong, but she was here to see Empress Xianda, so it was not good to talk about this matter with Tao Gugu. With doubts, she went to the Imperial Garden. Empress Xianda was not in Wei Yang Palace. The summer gradually came to an end. Even though Long Ye's summer was long at the end, it also started to feel cold. There were many hot days and it was rare to have a refreshing time. It was good to sit in the garden and enjoy the wind. When Shen Miao saw Empress Xianda, she was boiling tea to drink. Seeing Shen Miao arrive, she invited her to taste tea. This is Qiu Shan Huang, the new tea leaves sent this year. Ben Gong likes it very much. You should also try it. Empress Xianda said with a smile. She seemed to like drinking tea very much. She herself was as fragrant as the tea leaves and was a woman with a lingering aftertaste. Chapter 1043. Shen Miao picked up the teacup and tasted a mouthful. She only felt bitterness in her mouth, and in the bitterness, there was a lingering fragrance. It was indeed a very unique good tea. Empress Xianda asked, "How is it?" Shen Miao put down the teacup. The tea that Empress brewed is also top-notch. Ben Gong do not have any hobbies and only like this idea. Empress Xianda smiled. This tea is bitter and most young females do not like it. But one do not know why. One felt that you would like it. Most likely that Ben Gong felt that you and Ben Gong are somewhat similar. Shen Miao did not dare, and Empress Xianda smiled without a care. Let's not talk about this anymore. After you returned that night, Jing Xing should have told you about the matters in the palace. Shen Miao was slightly surprised. He said a little, "You will be curious." Jing Xing dotes on his wife and naturally would tell you everything. Empress Xianda smiled. Then what do you feel after hearing it? What do you feel about the current situation? These words seemed to have some meaning of testing Shen Miao. Shen Miao did not dare to be vague and thought about it before saying, now that the Lu family's fate is a foregone conclusion, the child in Jing Fei's womb would not be able to turn the tide. Since His Majesty and His Highness have already made a decision, then let nature take its course. What about the child? Empress Xianda took a sip of tea and asked, do you think that the child will be kept or not? Shen Miao paused before saying, whether the child is kept or not would not affect the overall situation. To make this decision, one would have to look at your ladyship's heart. Ben Gong's heart. Empress Xianda sighed slightly. In Ben Gong's heart, there has always been a thorn in it. But to say to remove this thorn, Ben Gong is not ruthless enough. She smiled self-mockingly. This position of Empress is really not suitable for Ben Gong. It is one thing to be used to it, but it is another thing to be suitable. Shen Miao did not speak. At this time, whatever she said would not be right. Empress Xianda changed the topic. Qin Wang Fei, there is no doubt that you can be a good female mistress of the entire residence of Prince Rui. But if in the future you have to shoulder a heavier burden and face more complicated things, can you do it well? Shen Miao's heart jumped. Empress Xianda's words seemed to be hinting at something. If it was in the past, Shen Miao would not have thought much about it, but Xie Jingxing had told her about Emperor Yongle. If Emperor Yongle did not live past the age of 35, and if Emperor Yongle had other plans, Shen Miao almost immediately guessed their plans. She composed herself and said, Your Highness, no one can say for sure what will happen in the future. However, this official wife will accompany His Highness. Whatever His Highness does, this official wife will assist him. Empress Xianda looked at her for a while, shook her head and sighed, You have no ambition, that's very good. But this is not good either. She said, However, Jing Xing is not the emperor, so your luck is very good. But you have to understand that one day, when you reach a certain height, many things will be beyond your control. You don't like it, but you can't show it. You must do it because it is the law of the world. Was Empress Xianda talking about her own feelings? Shen Miao calmly said, This official's wife will not do that. In the beginning, when the principle of the world was first brought up, it was also doubted. If one cannot stick to one's heart, there would be no meaning in reaching a higher position. One will not be able to do it, but it is because one does not work hard enough to change the surrounding environment. When Empress Xianda heard it, she was absent-minded for a long time. When she finally reacted, she looked deeply at Shen Miao. That look was very complicated, and Shen Miao could not explain it clearly. Perhaps it was envy and a little self-mockery. She said, "Perhaps what you said is right. But Bengong's half-life has passed, and there is no time to change." She was somewhat embarrassed. Shen Miao sensed that compared to the last time, Empress Xianda looked more experienced, but it was not her appearance. She still looked elegant and graceful, charming, and had the virtue and steadiness of an empress, but her eyes had a faint vicissitude, as if she was an old woman. Chapter 1044. Was it because of Consort Jing? Shen Miao thought about it in her heart and asked, "Heard that the Yi siblings also entered the palace today and saw Consort Jing?" The Lu family produced an empress with a spoiled dragon seed, thus the bugs in Long Yi would naturally become restless. The Yi family came and went to the palace, and today they came to see Bengong, but Bengong saw that the drunkard's intention was not wine, so Bengong followed them. Most likely the Yi family saw that Lu Jing was pregnant and had other intentions, so they wanted to probe Lu Jing's side. Empress Xianda's gaze was somewhat long. The young lady that the Yi family found was extremely beautiful. Not only beautiful but also intelligent. Not only intelligent, but also ambitious. This kind of female is most suitable to survive in the inner palace. Shen Miao's gaze slightly stagnated. Yi Mei wants to enter the palace? Mei Foran finally became the empress of Mingqi's Fu Xiu Yi, and now not only did her identity become a great Liang person, even her future also changed? Could it be that she wanted to become Emperor Yong Li's woman and also want to be the great Liang's empress? Shen Miao felt that it was very ridiculous and funny. Approximately so. Empress Xianda said carelessly, but Long Ye's harem only exists in name. If Yi Mei wants to fight for affection, jealousy, and power, she has miscalculated. Moreover, His Majesty does not intend to accept anyone now. What if she has other ways? Shen Miao asked. Yi Mei was vicious and merciless, and would climb up by hook or by crook. She had personally experienced this in the previous lifetime, so to let Yi Mei return without any achievements, it was impossible no matter how one looked at it. Shen Miao did not want to underestimate the opponent and did not want to make a big mistake because of her own carelessness. Empress Xianda looked strangely at Shen Miao and said, "You seem to dislike this Yi family's young lady." Then she said with relief, "Indeed, this Yi Mei's heart is not right and Bengong can see it. Bengong had stayed in the palace for so many years and Yi Mei's eyes are too greedy, so it is natural for you to be wary of her. At the beginning during the imperial hunt, there were rumors that you targeted Yi Mei because of jealousy, thus Bengong guessed that Yi Mei was not simple. Seeing it today, it is indeed so." Shen Miao said, "This official's wife indeed do not like her." Because of Jing Xing? Empress Xianda blinked her eyes mischievously and joked, "Don't worry, Jing Xing himself is very smart, he won't like a smarter woman. I don't like greedy and ambitious people like Yi Mei even more." Shen Miao. Empress Xianda's words made her sound like she was very stupid. Jing Xing and His Majesty have discussed that the Yi family should not be too involved. Bengong guesses that you are also one of the reasons. However, Bengong does not like the Yi family in the first place. Although the Yi family is a civil official, they do not have the demeanor of a civil official. Instead, they are slick and hypocritical, secretly harboring thoughts of disloyalty. Everyone in the Yi family cultivates crooked ways, but Empress Xianda seemed to think of something and said, "The young master of the Yi family is not bad. Bengong talked to him, and he is as innocent as a child. It is a pity that he is not good at walking, and is not respected in the Fu." Shen Miao had also heard of the matters of the crippled young master of the Yi family, but she did not know what his character was like. Hearing Empress Xianda say that, she could not help but sigh. He was a rare good person, but his luck was too bad. Empress Xianda said, "In a short while, the situation in Long Yi will be very tense. One fear that the residence of Prince Rui will be closely watched. Jing Xing is often outside, and there are places in the residence that cannot be taken care of. It is said that it is hard to guard against. You have to be more careful. Shen Miao's expression turned solemn. This official's wife understands. Dealing with the Lu and Yi families would undoubtedly set off a storm in Longyi City. As Xie Jingxing's wife and the Wang Fei of the residence of Prince Rui, she would naturally be the target of public criticism. Empress Xianda patted her hands. You have to start learning these now. Chapter 1045. Shen Miao complied, and just as she was speaking, she saw Tao Gugu and a little palace maid walking over. Tao Gugu said, Hui Pin and Ningern are quarreling at the flowery small building. Right now they are at a point where they can't be reconciled. Nyang Nyang, do you want to go and take a look? These days, Jing Fei was pregnant and the other womenfolk in the palace were starting to lose their composure. Originally, no one had any heirs, so it didn't matter if they were favored by the emperor or not. But now it was different. When one person ascended to the heavens, everyone else wanted to do it. Everyone had their own selfish motives and there were more conflicts than in the past. In addition, there were many officials who had the idea of sending people to Emperor Yongli's side. This inner palace was no longer as peaceful as it used to be. Once in a while, there would be some chaos. Although it was not a big deal, it would always cause trouble for others. A displeased expression appeared on Empress Xianda's face. No matter how good one's temper was, after being troubled like this all day, one would be in a bad mood. Your ladyship, go take a look first. Shen Miao said, no need to care about me. She did not have the thought of following Empress Xianda to watch the bustle, as Long Ye's inner palace had nothing to do with Shen Miao and could not help at all. Empress Xianda was helpless and could only stand up and said to Shen Miao, Ben Gong will first make a trip to the flowers courtyard. Qin Wang Fei can rest here and drink tea. If one feels bored, then walk around the garden as long as one does not go too far. Shen Miao had anise and fennel by her side and they were all skilled in martial arts, so she was not afraid of any accidents. Moreover, there were guards everywhere in the palace, so naturally it was safe. Shen Miao complied and Empress Xianda and Tao Gugu walked far away. As Shen Miao held the teacup, Empress Xianda's words appeared in her mind. She felt that Empress Xianda's words had a hidden meaning and had thought before, if Emperor Yonglu really could not live for long, after Emperor Yonglu left, who would sit on the great Liang's country? Previously, Jing Fei wasn't pregnant. It seemed that their plan wasn't to let Emperor Yongli's son inherit the throne. Moreover, the poison in Emperor Yongli's body had not been cleared and the children he gave birth to might be congenitally deficient and would not be able to take on the great cause. As such, the only one with the imperial bloodline who had the qualifications to inherit the great Liang's throne was only Xie Jingxing. Did Xie Jingxing become the emperor in his previous life? At least when she died, when Ming Qi fell, Emperor Yonglu was still alive and Xie Jingxing only led the troops to conquer the world. Was Xie Jingxing going to be the emperor in this life? If Xie Jingxing became the emperor, she would definitely be the empress. Since ancient times, there was no precedent of only one person in the inner palace. She was certain of what she said to Empress Xianda, and she would indeed not tolerate her husband having other women. Once this possibility came true, what Shen Miao could do was, since you are not interested, I will divorce. Breaking off with Xie Jingxing. However, fate was hard to come by. She didn't want to cut off the fate of husband and wife that she had accumulated for 2 lifetimes. Feeling a little annoyed, she stood up and decided to walk to the side of the pond to get some fresh air. Star anise and fennel followed her. The garden was densely forested, and under the layers of trees, there were winding paths, one after another, extending in all directions. Everywhere there was a new scenery, and it was very elegant. It was just that Shen Miao was not in the mood to appreciate the beautiful scenery. She walked to the side of the pond and the cool breeze blew on her face. It was refreshing and very comfortable and also calmed her down. After standing for a while, she planned to return to the stone table and sit down. She guessed that Empress Xianda should be back by now. Before leaving, her eyes casually glanced at the forest on the side. It was this glance. Shen Miao suddenly stopped in her tracks. She stared at the side and felt that the blood in her body was both cold and hot. It rushed to her head and she almost couldn't stand steadily. Star Anise and Fennel also looked nervously to the side, but they didn't find anything. Shen Miao suddenly pushed aside the bushes in front of her and ran to the path on the side. "Madam!" Star Anise and Fennel were shocked and hurried to follow. Shen Miao ran so fast that she didn't notice her hair and clothes rubbing against the dust on the branches. Looking closely, her hands were still trembling violently, her lips were white, and her eyes were wide open. She didn't dare to relax at all. She saw it. The youth's face was hidden in the branches of the forest, with a slightly shy smile and a familiar expression. It was Fu Ming. Her son Fu Ming. She couldn't be wrong. She couldn't be wrong. Shen Miao ran desperately, but there were 8 paths in the imperial garden, and each path led to a different place. The trees were dense and the youth disappeared in a flash, almost making her think that it was her illusion. There was no path in front, only a corner of the dark lake, a rockery, and a long pavilion. Shen Miao couldn't find the youth. Fennel and Star Anise followed behind and saw Shen Miao standing in the same place, not knowing what she was thinking and looking very lost. The 3 of them didn't make any other movements, but suddenly heard a woman's short scream in front, followed by the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. Plop! Chapter 1046. At the end of the fake mountain was a long flight of stairs. At the bottom of the stairs, there was a woman lying on the ground. There were large patches of blood under the woman. Shen Miao and the 2 servant girls stilled. They went forward to check and were shocked to find that the woman was Jing Fei. At this moment, Jing Fei was clutching her stomach, her face covered in sweat. Her face was as white as paper. She curled into a ball and moaned in pain. Shen Miao looked up and saw that the long flight of stairs had traces of being rubbed by someone. Obviously, Lu Jing had rolled down from this flight of stairs. Seeing Shen Miao, Lu Jing stretched out her hand with great effort and spat out 2 words, "Save me." Then she fainted. Octagonal Anise asked, "Madam, call someone over?" Shen Miao frowned. She is after all pregnant with the dragon's seed. Moreover, if the matter of seeing someone die and not saving was spread out, the one who would suffer would only be the residents of Prince Rue. Even though she was not willing to get involved in these dirty matters, she was not willing to let the residents of Prince Rue bear a bad name. Octagonal Anise nodded and hurried out. Fennel looked around and shook her head. "There's no one else here." They had long escaped. Shen Miao's eyes congealed. To be able to hurt people so openly in the palace, the other party's guts are not small. She then looked at the dying Jing Fei on the ground and sighed. Shen Miao had seen those women miscarry in the palace. With Jing Fei's appearance, one feared that the child in her stomach would not be able to be kept. Shen Miao did not sympathize with Lu Jing, but only felt pity for the unborn child. If it was not reincarnated into Lu Jing's stomach, how would it meet such a calamity at birth? Thinking of the child, Shen Miao suddenly thought of the youth's face that she saw in the forest. Her heart suddenly contracted. If that was really Fu Ming, why didn't he want to see her? If that wasn't Fu Ming, how could he have such an impression of Fu Ming? Shen Miao was thinking that there were only so many people coming and going in the palace. After the matter at Lu Jing's end was settled, she would ask Empress Xianda and Xie Jingxing to find that youth. She did not believe that it was an illusion. She was very clear-headed. The people that Ba Jiao called soon arrived and were shocked to see Jing Fei in such a state. Even though Emperor Yongle didn't seem to care about the pregnant Jing Fei was pregnant with Emperor Yongli's first child. Anyone with a discerning eye would be able to tell that the child would not be able to survive. Without saying much, these people quickly sent Jing Fei to Jinghua Palace. They called for the Grand Doctor and sent people to notify Emperor Yongle and Empress Xianda. Because Shen Miao was the first person to see Jing Fei, no matter if it was related to her or not, she could not escape responsibility and could not leave. Fennel was a little uneasy. The matters of the imperial family were the most complicated, especially when it involved the dragon race. The most difficult thing was to involve Shen Miao. Fennel even suspected that this was a conspiracy. Emperor Yongle and Empress Xianda quickly rushed over, but Shen Miao discovered that Xie Jingxing was not around and did not know where he went. She had wanted to talk to him about Fu Ming, but she could only give up now. When Emperor Yongle came, he only asked the surrounding people, At that time, Jing Fei didn't even have a maid by her side. Otherwise, she wouldn't have fallen down the stairs without anyone to support her. He could only ask Shen Miao for help. Empress Xianda frowned and asked, "Wasn't Jing Fei talking with Miss Yi in Jinghua Palace? Why did she go to the Imperial Garden? And where is Miss Yi?" She didn't suspect Shen Miao at all. Shen Miao was slightly surprised. Before she could speak, a short scream suddenly came from the room. Then, in the bedroom of Jinghua Palace, Jing Fei's maids ran out and knelt in front of Empress Xianda and Emperor Yongle, continuously kowtowing. The Grand Doctor walked out and wiped his sweat. He said in a low voice, "Emperor, this old subject is useless. Jing Fei has passed away." Chapter 1047. Everyone in the room was silent. Dead. The one who spoke was Empress Xianda. She said, "Why would Consort Jing die?" The old Grand Doctor bowed and said, "Ever since Consort Jing was pregnant, she had to take nourishment every day. This was already too much for the child and her body was weak and vigorous. Today the fall was too heavy and the child could not be kept. Consort Jing was also overly frightened and lost too much blood, so Shen Miao did not know what she was feeling in her heart. Lu Jing was naturally stupid, but to die carrying the dragon seed that she was pregnant with, the future crown prince, was perhaps the biggest blow to her. This was perhaps the fatal reason for her excessive fear." Emperor Yongli's face did not show any joy or anger. He was not happy because of this and did not feel pain. It was Empress Xianda who said in a deep voice, "Why would Consort Jing suddenly fall out of nowhere? Where did the palace maids beside her go?" The palace maids of Jinhua Palace quickly knelt down and said, "Previously when Consort and young lady of the Yi family were talking in the palace, she suddenly mentioned going to the Imperial Gardens for a walk. Consort did not like to have these servants by her side, and these servants did not dare to disobey Consort's orders. It was just that young lady of the Lu family did not return and Consort also did not return. When Consort saw Consort Jing again, it was Qin Wang Fei who sent her back. This Consort Jing's palace maid was as eloquent as Consort Jing and did not leave any traces of her guilt. But since something had happened to Consort Jing, the maids by her side could not escape the blame. Empress Xianda did not suspect Shen Miao at all and immediately asked, "Where is young lady of the Yi family? Come, find young lady of the Yi family." As it concerned the imperial sons and grandsons, it was a big matter and moreover it happened in the inner palace. Empress Xianda, as the ruler of the 6 palaces, naturally had to investigate thoroughly. Emperor Yongle did not speak and let Empress Xianda give the orders. From the time the matter happened till now, he did not reveal much emotions, making one unable to guess what he was thinking. Shen Miao was thinking about where Xie Jingxing went at such a crucial time, and at the same time she was thinking about the possibility of things happening. If it was said that Yi Mei killed Lu Jing? There was no reason for this at all. Even if Yi Mei wanted to enter the palace and come here to pry information from Lu Jing's mouth, there was no need to kill her. Moreover, Yi Mei was not someone who would do it herself. Although she was ruthless, most of the time, she would instruct others to do it. In the end, she would get what she wanted without a speck of dust. Even if Yi Mei really wanted to kill Lu Jing, there was no need to use such a stupid method. Everyone knew that she went out with Jing Fei. If something happened to Jing Fei, wouldn't she be the first to be suspected? This made Shen Miao puzzled. The people of Jinghua Palace were all thinking about their own matters. Not long after, they heard the panicked voice of a woman behind them, "Jing Fei nyang 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 nyang." Shen Miao turned back to look and saw Yi Mei being brought in by a few guards. Her expression was somewhat flustered and there was even more helplessness and disbelief. She took 2 steps forward and was stopped by Empress Xianda's guards. Empress Xianda looked at her and said coldly, "Where did Miss Yi go? Why did you only come now? Before Jing Fei died, you went out with her to the Imperial Garden. Why did you disappear when something happened to Jing Fei?" These words were all aggressive and had the attitude of a punitive expedition. Empress Xianda usually looked calm and gentle, but at this moment, she had the demeanor of an empress. Her words made Yi Mei shrink back. Shen Miao looked at her coldly. Yi Mei lowered her head in disbelief and seemed to be recalling. She said, this official's daughter was previously talking with Jing Fei Nyang in Jinghua Palace. Jing Fei Nyang said that the weather outside was cool and wanted to get some wind. Jing Fei Nyang's palace maids also wanted to go, but Jing Fei Nyang felt that it would be inconvenient if there were too many people. Moreover, it was only a walk in the imperial garden and there would not be any danger. With this official's daughter at the side, there was no need to use other people. Chapter 1048. Hearing this, everyone in the room had different expressions. Lu Jing originally had a proud personality, and because she was pregnant, it became even worse. Perhaps it was because Lu Jing saw Yi Mei's beauty and felt uncomfortable in her heart, or maybe it was because of some other reason, but in the end, she let Yi Mei go with them. Lu Jing wanted to order Yi Mei around like a maid, so she didn't call her palace maids, in order to make things difficult for Yi Mei. This really was Jing Fei's personality. Afterwards, this subject and Jing Fei Nyang were walking in the garden. Jing Fei Nyang suddenly said it was a bit cold and wanted this subject to find a silk cloak for her. That cloak wasn't in Jinghua Palace, but in a scholar's little building. This official's daughter wasn't familiar with the roads in the palace and wasted a lot of time looking for the small building. When this official's daughter got the cloak, the Empress guards came and said that something had happened to Jing Fei. Yi Mei knelt down and said, when this subject left, Jing Fei Nyang was still fine. This subject really doesn't know what happened. She suddenly thought of something and said, if Nyang doesn't believe, you can send someone to find the talented person in the small building. She can testify for this subject. This subject went to find her to get the cloak at the time. This subject went to get the cloak. How could it have harmed Jing Fei Nyang? Empress Xianda frowned. Everyone was very clear of Jing Fei's personality. Outside, ordering Yi Mei to be a servant girl to get a cloak from far away, it really was in line with Jing Fei's usual methods. Empress Xianda said, Tao Gugu, take people to that noble's small building and ask clearly. If they are lying, they will be heavily punished. Yi Mei hurriedly said, that noble's surname is Chao. Tao Gugu received the order and left. The room instantly sank into a stalemate. Yi Mei knelt on the ground, her frail body trembling, her face full of grievance. When she smiled, she was as charming as a kitten, able to captivate a person's soul. Right now, she was silently shedding tears, as if she was frightened, but also delicate and pitiful. Her eyes were misty, and her shoulders trembled. She was like a kitten, making people feel pity for her and want to hold her in their arms. Her kneeling feet happened to be in a very delicate position. When Emperor Yongle lowered his head, he could see her beautiful side profile and her fragile figure. Empress Xianda saw all of this and curled up her lips with a faint smile. Shen Miao gasped in amazement and finally knew why she lost to Yi Mei in her previous lifetime. Even in this kind of urgent situation, Yi Mei still used her beauty to charm people's hearts without holding back. Shen Miao liked Fu Xiu-yi, so she silently paid and clumsily used her own precious things to exchange for him. As for Yi Mei, she liked a person. It should be said that Yi Mei wanted a person, which was to show off her most beautiful side, to make people pay for her, to exchange their most precious things for her. Shen Miao glanced at Emperor Yongle. Yi Mei's plan would most likely fail as Emperor Yongle did not even look at Yi Mei. The two brothers of the Xie family were like two iron plates. Beauty alone was probably not enough. Moreover, Emperor Yongle looked like he did not care about a woman's beauty as compared to Xie Jingxing. But before Auntie Tao could arrive, the Lu family came. Both Lu Furen and Master Lu came. The child in Consort Jing's stomach was gone and Consort Jing was also gone. Other than Consort Jing herself, who had already passed away, the ones who were the most angry about this matter were the Lu family. Lu Jingchun aggressively brought Lu Furen to Jinhua Palace. The palace servants did not stop them and Emperor Yongle was also too lazy to stop them. When Lu Furen came in, she sat on the ground and cried, lamenting her poor daughter. Shen Miao looked at Lu Furen's actions like she was looking at a jumping clown. If she really loved her daughter, why would the first thing she did after entering the palace was not to see Lu Jing's corpse and see her daughter for the last time, but cry miserably in front of the emperor and empress? One fear that the love for her daughter was fake and the true love for the dragon seed in Lu Jing's stomach was the dragon seed. Chapter 1049. Lu Jingchun was born with a fiendish appearance. Now that he had a stern face and an aggressive appearance, he really looked like an evil spirit from hell. It made people vaguely feel that if it wasn't for the fact that the situation was not right, he would even commit regicide. He said, "Your Majesty, Jing and the dragon seed in her abdomen were poisoned, and this is not a small matter. This official had raised Jinger to this age and hoped that your Majesty can be considerate of this official's love for his daughter and give this official an explanation." Shen Miao almost wanted to laugh. Looking at Lu Jingchuan's words, it seemed that he was looking for Emperor Yonglu to denounce him. Such an arrogant attitude, was it really because he was Emperor Xiao Wu's confidant that he had such guts? One fear that he did not place Emperor Yonglu in his eyes from the start and had a disloyal official's heart. His words and actions would also show disrespect to the emperor. Emperor Yonglu lightly said, "The imperial son and imperial grandson are stirring up trouble." General Lu reminded Zhen that it is unnecessary. Lu Jingchun choked. In the past, Emperor Yonglu would always treat him politely, but now he did not give any face at all. He also knew that the imperial family had started to secretly deal with the Lu family. Originally, he thought that with consort Jing's pregnancy, the Lu family would have more chips, but who knew that the chicken was lost and the eggs were broken, so how could he not be flustered and exasperated? But he could no longer openly go against Emperor Yonglu like in the past. That ignorant child had already become the emperor and had more means than he had imagined. The Lu family's power had declined. There was such a kind of person in the world who bullied the weak and feared the strong. He was unreasonable, but you were even more unreasonable than him, thus he would be terrified. Lu Jing was like this and Lu Jingchun was also like this. Lu Foran just finished crying and looked at Shen Miao. "When something happened to Jing, you were at the scene. Did you see the murderer?" Shen Miao shook her head. Lu Jingchun sternly said, "At that time when you were there, Ji could still speak. It was obvious that the person did not take action for long, so how could one not see it?" Before Shen Miao could speak, Emperor Yonglu spoke first. "Qin Wangfei was only passing by and it is not a crime to not see the murderer." General Lu did not go and investigate the murderer and blamed the person who should not be blamed. Concern causes confusion. Shen Miao did not expect that Emperor Yonglu would speak for her, as Emperor Yonglu had always looked down on her. Lu Jingchun sneered, "Your Majesty, in this world, there are many cases of thieves crying thief." Empress Xiande frowned. "Qin Wangfei would not do such a thing. Ben Gong is willing to use the identity of the Empress as a guarantee." Emperor Yonglu and Empress Xiande spoke for Shen Miao, so Lu Jingchun could not say anything. He smiled, but his smile was very fierce. Shen Miao said, "Even though I saw that something happened to consort Jing, but the young lady of the Yi family had been accompanying consort Jing before it happened. General Lu might as well ask her. Who did not know how to divert trouble to another?" Originally this matter was stirred up by Yi Mei, and Shen Miao was not willing to take the blame for Yi Mei. Lu Jingchun looked at Yi Mei, who was kneeling on the ground. His eyes flashed, but he did not say anything. Shen Miao understood that this Lu Jingchun looked like a martial artist, but he had his own shrewdness. Now that the Lu family was being besieged by the imperial family, the situation was getting more and more tense by the day. Naturally, they wanted to find an ally. The Yi family couldn't be any better. But Yi Maokai was more shrewd than him, and the Yi family had yet to decide which side to stand on. Lu Jingchun naturally hoped that the Yi family would stand on his side. Anyway, his daughter and grandson were already dead and the future matters were more important. In comparison, he was even more unwilling to offend potential allies for the sake of dead people. For a family in the center of power, they could even sacrifice their children in vain. A son would still consider it, and as for a daughter, there was almost no need to care, as they were people of other families. As Shen Miao was thinking like this in her heart, she saw a person dressed as a guard walking over and walking to the front of Emperor Yonglu. "Your Majesty, someone said that they saw the murderer that pushed consort Jing down the stairs." Chapter 1050. When the words were said, everyone was shocked. Emperor Yonglu and Empress Xianda had not even spoken when Lu Jingchun had already opened his mouth. Who is it? Did that person say who the murderer is? Lu Furen, however, quickly clasped her hands together and said bitterly, "The heavens have a spirit and can finally find the person who killed my Jing. Wait till I find that person and make him pay with blood." The Lu family's attitude was just too exaggerated. Emperor Yonglu coldly said, "Bring him in." Shen Miao subconsciously looked at Yi Mei on the ground. Yi Mei was kneeling on the ground with her back slightly bent, looking like she was wronged and helpless. Shen Miao, however, noticed her hands. The long sleeves covered her palms but revealed her fingertips. The slender fingers were really as beautiful as tender onions, but the thumb and index finger of her left hand formed a circle and gently rubbed together. Shen Miao had dealt with Mei Furen for a lifetime and naturally knew the meaning of her every action. Shen Miao was very clear about this action. When Yi Mei was scheming against someone and when her goal was about to be achieved, she would involuntarily do this action. Shen Miao's heart jumped. That witness who came to testify was a part of Yi Mei's scheme? She was about to achieve her goal? Or perhaps Lu Jing's death was really related to Yi Mei? Following that, there was a sound of twigs, 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 twigs coming from outside the room. This sound was like the sound of wheels rolling on the ground. Shen Miao slightly narrowed her eyes and looked towards the door. A maidservant pushed a person into the room. That person was sitting on a chair with wheels, and there was a blanket covering his knees with both hands folded neatly on his knees. He seemed to be unable to walk, and that chair with wheels could be pushed forward effortlessly by the maid. When one got closer, one could see clearly that that person was around 11 or 12 years old. His appearance was delicate and was a youth wearing an ivory-colored robe. He seemed to be somewhat shy, but there was a trace of panic in his eyes. Shen Miao stood there as if she had turned into a stone statue. Her eyes were instantly filled with hot tears that almost fell down. Fu Ming. Time suddenly turned around. She could almost see through the beautiful young man on the wheelchair to the little boy wearing a bright yellow robe holding a large bouquet of red plum blossoms in his hands, smiling at her in a flattering and caring manner. He said, "Mu, urchin saw that the plum blossoms in the courtyard have bloomed, so I climbed the tree and cut a large bouquet. Muhu looks at the red plum blossoms in the room every day and feels comfortable. Your illness will soon recover." He said, "Although Jiejie is no longer here, your son will always accompany Muhu." He said, "Don't worry, mother. Your son will learn from the grand tutor. When your son becomes stronger, no one will dare to bully mother." Now, that beautiful and exquisite youth was pushed in front of Yi Mei and called out softly, "Big sister." Shen Miao's eyes widened. He was the young master of the Yi family, Yi Hongguang, who was born of a concubine and was registered under Madame Ye's name. People from the Yi clan? The manservant pushed Yi Hongguang forward. Yi Hongguang faced Emperor Yonglu and was slightly nervous. It was as though he didn't know where to put his hands and feet when facing the ruler of Great Liang. He said, "Hongguang greets your majesty. Please forgive Hongguang's legs for not being able to properly greet." Emperor Yonglu lightly waved his hands. Yi Hongguang seemed to be facing so many people for the first time and was somewhat afraid. He involuntarily turned the mechanism on the chair and moved closer to Yi Mei. When Shen Miao saw this, her gaze suddenly paused. How could Fu Ming and Yi Mei have such an intimate posture? She suddenly had an impulse to pull Fu Ming away from Yi Mei's side. But she could not. She and Fu Ming were strangers. Chapter 1051. It seemed that her gaze was too persistent that even Yi Hongguang could sense it. Yi Hongguang swept a glance over with some curiosity in his eyes. Seeing Shen Miao staring at him without blinking, he lowered his head in shock and rubbed the edge of the blanket on his knees uneasily. "Young Master Yi?" Lu Jingchuan's brows wrinkled as he asked, "You saw the murderer who killed Jing?" Yi Hongguang was startled and jumped in shock when he saw Lu Jingchuan's fiendish look and looked towards Yi Mei for help. Every time he looked at Yi Mei with a dependent gaze, Shen Miao's heart felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. Empress Xianda said in a pleasant manner, "Hongguang, you said that you saw the person who pushed down Consort Jing. Is it true?" Empress Xianda seemed to have a good impression of Yi Hongguang and spoke much more gently. Yi Hongguang looked at Empress Xianda and it seemed that he was not that afraid as he nodded his head. Then who is that person? Empress Xianda asked. Yi Hongguang lowered his head as if he was somewhat timid. After hesitating for a long time, he then raised his head again. The direction he raised his head was towards Shen Miao and his eyes also landed on Shen Miao. Then Yi Hongguang slowly reached out his hand and pointed at Shen Miao before saying softly, "It is her." Shen Miao was like being struck by lightning. Empress Xianda's expression changed and asked in a stern voice, "Hongguang, do you know that if one lies, it is a crime of deceiving the monarch and one will lose their head?" Emperor Yonglu also said coldly, "Are you sure that you saw it clearly?" The Emperor and Empress' attitude made it clear that they did not believe Yi Hongguang's words. Yi Hongguang looked to be very timid, but under the pressure of the Emperor and Empress, he became more determined. He looked at Shen Miao and said with certainty, "It is this foreign." Shen Miao staggered a step and almost could not believe her own ears. This foreign, Fu Ming actually called her, this foreign. Her son was now by her enemy's side and was helping her enemy to testify against her. How ridiculous! When her actions landed in the eyes of others, it seemed that she had a guilty conscience. Lu Jingquan's eyes narrowed and without a second word, he reached out to Shen Miao's body and actually wanted to drag Shen Miao over. Seeing this, Star Anise and Fennel immediately stood in front of Shen Miao to protect her. No one expected that Lu Jingquan would suddenly make a move. The Imperial Guards hurriedly protected Empress Xianda and Emperor Yonglu. Emperor Yonglu shouted, "Lu Jingquan, you are making a move in the Jinghua Palace. Are you trying to rebel?" As Lu Jingquan fought with the Star Anise, he loudly said, "Your Majesty, my Lu family has lost Jing. Now that the murderer is in front of us, let this old man take revenge for the murder of my daughter. Then, you'll punish me for my crimes. Even if I bring it out to the world, I'm afraid the common people will think that I did the right thing." This Lu Jingquan was truly a troublemaker. Emperor Yonglu's face turned ashen. Star Anise and Fennel had to consider their identities and Shen Miao, but Lu Jingquan's every move was ruthless and deadly. The two girls were about to lose. Shen Miao stared blankly at Yi Hongguang, who was beside Yi Mei. Yi Hongguang seemed to be avoiding her gaze and was unwilling to look at Shen Miao. Instead, he whispered something to Yi Mei. Just at this moment, Lu Jingquan's legs suddenly went soft and he knelt on the ground. Everyone did not see clearly what happened and only heard a pada sound as 2 gold ingots fell to the ground. Lu Jingquan held his knees as he fell to the ground. A calm voice sounded from outside. "When this prince is not here, any Tom, Dick, or Harry can bully this prince's woman?" He was even more arrogant and rampant than Lu Jingquan. In the calm voice, everyone could hear the anger. One saw Xie Jingxing appearing at the door with a gold ingot in his hand. Obviously, he had used this to injure Lu Jingquan's knees. He strode over to Shen Miao's side and when he saw Shen Miao's pale expression, he thought that Shen Miao was frightened and became even angrier. He turned to look at Lu Jingquan, who was being helped up by his subordinates, and indifferently said, "Master Lu, do you have any dissatisfaction with this prince?" His appearance was handsome and his tone was calm, but it sent a chill down one's spine. Lu Jingquan was not to be outdone. Even though he was angry that Xie Jingxing made a fool of him, he was still unforgiving. He said, "Ying, who was killed by someone. Young Master Yi saw it with his own eyes and it was Shen Miao who did it. For this old man to take revenge for his daughter, it is only right and proper." "Young Master Yi?" Xie Jingxing's gaze swept around the room and stopped on Yi Hongguang, who was in a wheelchair. He slowly walked over to Yi Hongguang and looked down at him from above. Xie Jingxing was a person that made people feel pressured. When Yi Hongguang was stared at by him, he felt somewhat uncomfortable and avoided his gaze. Xie Jingxing looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. "Which eye of yours saw her kill someone?" Not waiting for Yi Hongguang to reply, Xie Jingxing lightly said, "Which eye of yours saw it, I will dig out that eye of yours." Chapter 1052. Whichever eye you saw it with, I will dig out that eye of yours. A brazen threat, and not caring that Lu Jingquan and Emperor Yonglu were present, he dared to say such disgraceful words. Lu Jingchun was so angry that he almost raised his head. Xie Jingxing's meaning was clearly for Yi Hongguang to change his words in front of him. How could there be such a scoundrel in the world? Now, tell me again. Xie Jingxing played with the gold ingot in his hand and carelessly said, "What did you see?" Yi Hongguang had never seen such a situation before and had never thought that there would be someone who dared to be so unreasonable in front of the emperor. In his nervousness, he looked at Yi Mei as if asking for help. This was because among the people present, Yi Mei was the one who had the closest relationship with him. But what made Yi Hongguang disappointed was that Yi Mei did not help him and lowered her head to avoid Yi Hongguang's gaze. Like this, Yi Hongguang was even more helpless. Emperor Yonglu and Empress Xiande did not speak. Originally, Lu Jingchuan's arrogance was infuriating, but Xie Jingxing was not someone who would suffer losses. When the two of them met, no matter how one looked at it, it was Lu Jingchun who was at a disadvantage, so the two of them would not speak. Even though Lu Jingchun was angry with Xie Jingxing, he did not dare to act rashly. Emperor Yonglu still had to consider his status as the emperor, and it was not the time to shed all pretense of cordiality, but Xie Jingxing was different. When Xie Jingxing first returned to Longyi, there were also court officials who pointed out their suspicions of Xie Jingxing in the throne room. At that time, they all smiled and agreed. Not long after, did those court officials have a good ending? Xie Jingxing was a vicious person and would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Unless there was no other choice, one must not shed all pretense of cordiality with him. Yi Hongguang was unwilling to speak, and Shen Miao calmed down at this time. She walked forward and happened to be shoulder to shoulder with Xie Jingxing. Looking at the youth on the wheelchair, she said, "You really saw me push Jing Fei down?" Yi Hongguang raised his head to look at her. Shen Miao was after all a female, and Yi Hongguang was not that afraid of her. Even though his expression was still somewhat unnatural, his courage was much bigger. He hesitated for a bit before firmly nodding his head. She said, "Good, then you tell me, where were you at that time?" Yi Hongguang was stunned. "Are you above or below the steps?" Shen Miao patiently guided. She softened her tone like a gentle older sister, but Yi Hongguang suddenly shrunk his neck because of her question. Yi Mei, who was kneeling motionlessly on the ground with her head lowered, also trembled slightly. Shen Miao did not give him a chance to think as she pressed on and asked, "Do you remember? Above or below?" Below, Yi Hongguang said. Shen Miao laughed softly. Lu Jingchun and Madame Lu angrily looked at her, seemingly annoyed that she could still smile in this kind of situation. However, Empress Yenda's eyes relaxed slightly. Emperor Yonglu stared at Shen Miao while Xie Jingxing crossed his arms and looked at Yi Hongguang with a smile that was not a smile. "That is really strange." Shen Miao said, "That flight of steps is very long and steep, and it is because of this that Jing Fei fell so heavily. Such a long and steep flight of stairs, how could you see me standing at the top? One feared that one would not even be able to see Jing Fei's shadow." Yi Hongguang was stunned in a moment. He was not old and did not leave the residence all year round. Seeing Emperor Yonglu today, he was already very nervous, but now that Shen Miao said that, he panicked. Yi Mei slowly clenched his fists. Shen Miao asked, "Young Master Yi, think again. Could it be that you have misremembered? Was it above or below?" Yi Hongguang quickly said, "Above. I have misremembered. It is above." He repeated it again with certainty. Chapter 1053. Yi Mei, who was on the floor, suddenly shrugged her shoulders as if she was somewhat discouraged. Shen Miao was still smiling, but her eyes turned sharp as she said, "Oh? Young Master Ye's legs are inconvenient and it is such a long flight of steps. One would think that one would not be able to go up by oneself. There should be someone who would carry you up or carry your wheelchair up. You should also have your own servant by your side. Why is it that only you saw me pushing people and not your servant?" The room quietened down in a moment. Large drops of sweat appeared on Yi Hongguang's forehead. His face flushed red and he could not speak for a moment, as if his lie had been exposed. Emperor Yonglu coldly said, "Do you know what is the crime of deceiving the emperor?" The crime of deceiving the emperor was one's head. It was also that Yi Hongguang could not take fright. One had to know that Shen Miao's words, if one was clever, one could find other excuses. For example, when the servant went to take things and temporarily left him alone, most people would not obediently plead guilty and would fight for what was right. But Yi Hongguang easily admitted his lie. It was obvious that he did not often do such things and was not familiar with it. If it was a veteran like Yi Mei, it would be much easier for the steamy eyes to lie. Xie Jingxing's lips curled up. Imperial older brother, an official's relative knowingly committed a crime. Just throw them to the Ministry of Justice, or maybe parade them in the streets. He lazily said, otherwise anyone can bully the people of Prince Rui's residence. Then how can I live? Xie Jingxing was clearly using his position to avenge a private grudge. But he was not a good person and did not have any good feelings towards the Yi family, thus there was no hesitation when he spoke of these things. It only made Yi Mei's face pale and Lu Jingchuan's expression very ugly. Killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Who was the chicken and who was the monkey? It was clear at a glance. Empress Yenda said, Yi Hongguang, you dare to lie in the palace and vainly attempt to slander Qin Wangfei. Her harsh words and stern expression made Yi Hongguang almost cry out in fright. But Yi Mei ignored him and he did not have any familiar people in the palace, so he was very helpless. The young master of the Yi family is young and it is understandable for him to see wrongly. Thinking about it, when he saw that something had happened to Jing Fei, he was anxious and because he caught the culprit, it is possible that he misunderstood something. Shen Miao helped Yi Hongguang exonerate. Everyone was surprised by her actions. Yi Hongguang had slandered Shen Miao and even though Shen Miao was not a vicious person, she would not show mercy to those who harmed her. Looking at the second and third household of the Shen family and even the imperial family of Mingqi, when had she ever been soft? Hence, Yi Hongguang's leniency was rather puzzling. Xie Jingxing also frowned. Shen Miao slightly bent over and her line of sight was at the same level as Yi Hongguang. She said warmly, or perhaps you heard something from others so you misunderstood me. Did anyone teach you to say that? Yi Hongguang's body suddenly shook. Shen Miao was close to him and could clearly see the flash of panic in Yi Hongguang's eyes. Yi Hongguang really wasn't good at lying. Although he didn't show it, almost everyone could see that he was lying. Xie Jingxing's eyes sharpened but Yi Hongguang raised his head again and looked at Shen Miao firmly. No one taught me. There was no one to teach him but he no longer insisted that Shen Miao was the murderer. Shen Miao said, I know. Empress Yenda frowned and thought about it before saying, the matter of Jing Fei will be handed over to the Ministry of Justice for investigation. Yi Hongguang, since you have lied, then it cannot be treated as true. The most urgent matter is to investigate the palace to see if there is such an assassin and also to collect the corpse of Jing Fei. Finally she looked at the Lu couple and said, what else does General Lu have to say? At the end her tone was filled with ridicule. Chapter 1054. Lu Zhengchun looked at Empress Yenda and held a breath in his heart. In the beginning, when Emperor Yongle favored Jing Fei, they had hoped that Jing Fei would replace Empress Yenda's position. But Empress Yenda's usual actions were not something that could be used against her. After so many years, they had not succeeded. Lu Jing had given pillow talk to Emperor Yongle countless times but in the end, Emperor Yongle did not have the intention to abolish the Empress. It was not easy for Lu Jing to conceive the dragon seed and it was at such a delicate time. They thought that they could turn the tables but who knew that the weather was unpredictable and all their efforts were for naught. In reality, Lu Jingchun himself knew that Lu Jing was already dead and it was too late to say anything now. But he was unwilling and hoped that Emperor Yongle could compensate him with something. Today he had pestered Emperor Yongle endlessly, and although he was angry, it wasn't because of his daughter's tragic death, but because he felt pity for his grandson. Xie Jingxing's sudden appearance made Lu Jingchun put away his arrogance. In terms of viciousness, this Prince Rui was even more vicious. Knowing that there was no gain today, Lu Jingchun unwillingly said, this subject obeys the emperor. At the side, a murderous intent flashed through Emperor Yongli's eyes. The Lu couple left. From entering the palace to leaving the palace, they did not even look at the dead Jing Fei once, as though she was not their own daughter. After they left, Emperor Yonglu said, "You all should also return." Empress Xianda looked strangely at Emperor Yonglu. This Yi Mei and Yi Hongguang, one was with Jing Fei at that time. Even though there were talented people in the small building as witnesses, it could not wash away all the suspicions. The other one directly slandered Shen Miao. Even if these two people were not the murderers, they would definitely not be spared. But Emperor Yonglu did not seem to have any intentions of pursuing it. Empress Xianda was puzzled but saw Emperor Yongli's body move imperceptibly. Her heart jumped, but she did not care about anything else and immediately said, "Not bad, go back now." Xie Jingxing's brows furrowed, but he did not say anything. He only looked coldly at Yi Mei, who was thanking him, and the manservant who was pushing Yi Hongguang. He slowly stood up and hurriedly left. He said, "Since there's nothing else, I will take my leave first." Xie Jingxing never hid his emotions in front of Emperor Yonglu. Obviously, he was not happy with Emperor Yongli's punishment. Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing left Jinhua Palace together, and as they were walking out of the palace, they coincidentally met Yi Mei and her brother. Shen Miao was slightly startled. Yi Hongguang suddenly ordered the manservant who was pushing him to stop. He turned around and looked at Shen Miao as if he had something to say. Xie Jingxing's face immediately became ugly. He had classified all the Yi family's people as dangerous people. If dangerous people were to get close to Shen Miao, what if something happened? Thus, he followed closely behind, the dagger in his sleeve unsheathed without batting an eyelid. Shen Miao watched as the youth stopped in front of her. Not far away, Yi Mei was looking over with a nervous expression. It seemed that she wanted to stop Yi Hongguang's actions, but with Tai Yi and Song Yang blocking her, she didn't dare move. Yi Hongguang raised his head and looked at her with a red face. He seemed to be very ashamed as he said, "Sorry." He seemed to want to say something but hesitated for a moment. In the end, he did not say anything. He looked at Shen Miao again before pushing the wheelchair and left. Xie Jingxing's eyebrows raised as if he did not understand what Yi Hongguang meant. Shen Miao looked at his back and her expression became somewhat complicated. On the carriage back, Xie Jingxing saw that Shen Miao did not speak at all and said, "Let the MOU army capture that brat to the tower prison and lock him up for a day or two. After he is honest, he will then explain who the person behind him is." Chapter 1055. He was talking about Yi Hongguang. Today, with Yi Hongguang's performance in Jinhua Palace, even a fool would not believe that there was no one who instructed him to slander Shen Miao. Shen Miao rolled her eyes at Xie Jingxing. What is there to explain? Other than Yi Mei, who else could it be? Yi Mei's small actions could be hidden from others but not from her. Then why are you still unhappy? Xie Jingxing pinched her face. Seeing that brat today, it was very strange. Is there anything that I do not know? He narrowed his eyes. Shen Miao pushed his hand away. Do you still remember that I told you about the dream that I had? In the dream, I gave birth to a son and a daughter. Xie Jingxing's joking expression paused as he looked at her. When I first saw Yi Hongguang, I felt that he was too similar to the child in the dream, my child. I thought that he was the child in the dream. But he stood on Yi Mei's side and helped Yi Mei to slander me. To tell the truth, I was very sad. Shen Miao said, but afterwards I took a careful look and discovered that they were not the same. They only looked alike. Speaking of which, now thinking about it, they only looked like each other and there were still many differences. After a short period of surprise and sadness, Shen Miao kept paying attention to that beautiful youth. At first glance, he and Fu Ming did not look any different, but their temperaments were completely different. Because Fu Ming was not favored by Fu Xiuyi and because of her tit-for-tat relationship with Mei Furen, he matured early since young. Fu Ming was generous, magnanimous, upright, and kind. Fu Ming had the qualities that an outstanding heir to the throne should have. But this child in front of her was just an ordinary young master of an official's family. Most likely because of the inconvenience of his legs, he had some inferiority complex. Fu Ming would not lie, Fu Ming would not stand by Yi Mei's side, and Fu Ming would not help Yi Mei to deal with her. The most important thing was that Shen Miao stood in front of that child, but there were no waves in her heart. There was a connection between mother and son, and if she was able to feel Fu Ming, her heart would not be so calm. Yi Hongguang was not Fu Ming but was very similar to Fu Ming. She was almost bewitched, but she quickly regained her composure. There was no mother who understood her own son, so there was no shadow of Fu Ming on Yi Hongguang. This made Shen Miao very disappointed, but at the same time she was relieved. If Fu Ming really became a member of the Yi clan in this life, the Yi clan would use him to deal with Shen Miao. That was what Shen Miao was most unwilling to see. Similar? Xie Jingxing was puzzled. That's why you are especially tolerant of him? There should be this reason. Shen Miao said, facing that face, one would not be able to be ruthless. Moreover, you also know that the main culprit of this matter is someone else. Yi Hongguang was merely being used by someone else. He probably didn't even lie often, so the way he lied made people not know whether to laugh or cry. It is just that I am very curious. Shen Miao said, if this matter is really related to Yi Mei, why would Yi Mei push Consort Jing down? This isn't her style of doing things. I always feel that she's too careless. Xie Jingxing smiled. Or is it just an accident? Accident? At the same time, Yi Mei and Yi Hongguang were on the carriage returning to the mansion. Yi Hongguang was very uneasy. The manservant carried him into the carriage and sat beside Yi Mei. Yi Mei, who usually spoke in a gentle and soft voice, did not speak a single word to him after entering the carriage. Yi Hongguang's face showed some uneasiness. Just as he was about to speak, Yi Mei suddenly said, "Third younger brother, what did you say to Prince Consort?" Yi Mei was also smiling, and this smile was no different from usual, but Yi Hongguang did not know why, but he felt a little afraid. He hesitated for a moment before softly saying, "I said sorry to her." Chapter 1056. Yi Mei's expression slightly changed. "Qin Wang Fei looks like a good person." Yi Hongguang lowered his head and whispered, "I slandered her like that, but she did not get angry and was amiable to me. She is a good person and did not look down on me for being a cripple. Eldest sister, I have lied and wronged a good person. My heart is very uneasy." "Did I not say it before?" Yi Mei frowned and said, "If you don't say this, the Emperor and Empress will definitely suspect me. It's fine if they suspect me, but it will implicate the entire Yi family. Do you want to see father and mother implicated? The imperial family people would not care about right and wrong. Father and mother are old and being tormented like this. The matter of face is small, but what if their bodies are injured?" These words were somewhat impolite. Yi Mei had always been polite and kind to Yi Hongguang, and Yi Hongguang also liked this elder sister who looked like a fairy. This was the first time he was reprimanded by Yi Mei like this, and there was some indignation, so Yi Hongguang's heart did not feel good. He dared not say anything more and only heard Yi Mei speaking again. "Moreover, how do you know that she was wronged?" Qin Wang Fei herself said that it was not her. The Emperor and Empress also trust her. Yi Hongguang whispered, "Older sister, why must one lie? Why not let them suspect you so that it is necessary to identify Qin Wang Fei?" Anger finally appeared on Yi Mei's face and she looked somewhat sinisterly at Yi Hongguang. "You would rather believe her and not believe this older sister?" Yi Hongguang shook his head. "I just feel that Qin Wang Fei is not such a person." Saying that she believed Shen Miao, Yi Mei's anger could not be expressed in words. Emperor Yonglu, Empress Xianda, Prince Rui, and now even Yi Hongguang. What kind of demonic technique did Shen Miao have that she could win the trust of others? Even she could not gain any advantage from Shen Miao's hands. Thinking of what happened before, Yi Mei could not help but tremble. She did not think that Lu Jing would be arrogant and stupid to this extent. Yi Mei only listened to Yi Maocai's instructions and came over to inquire about the news from Lu Jing, who knew that Lu Jing's jealousy was so obvious that she deliberately made things difficult for her. Yi Mei was also a person who could keep her composure. However, Lu Jing was the first to get angry. Lu Jing actually wanted to ruin her appearance. How could Yi Mei be the type to suffer losses? In the midst of the dispute, she accidentally pushed Lu Jing down. She fled in panic. She originally wanted to take advantage of the chaos to escape. Yi Maocai would definitely not offend her for her sake. Yi Mei could only rely on herself. Yet, at this time, she found that after being in Longyi for such a long time, she hadn't fought for a way out for herself. Even with the backing of the Yi family, it was still unclear whether they were friend or foe. However, her luck had never been too bad. She could always find a way out of a hopeless situation. Lu Jing had actually died. Dead men tell no tales. Everything was over. She didn't need to run anymore. After Yi Mei slowly calmed down, she thought of a way to bribe the unfavored talented young man. She knew that no matter what, she would not be able to clear all the doubts, so she simply stirred up the water even more. She made Yi Hongguang testify as well. Yi Mei threatened Yi Hongguang. If he didn't lie, the entire Yi residence would be implicated. Yi Hongguang was timid and had grown up in the Yi residence since young. He was not clear about the situation outside and the ways of the world, so he agreed in fear. But Yi Mei did not think that Yi Hongguang would be so useless that Shen Miao caught his mistakes and pressured him step by step. This act of framing was almost useless at the end, and the Lu family's fear of Xie Yuan made Yi Mei finally understand how terrible it was to offend the residence of Prince Rui. Previously she proposed to Yi Maokai to assassinate Shen Miao, and now she instructed Yi Hongguang to slander Shen Miao. Yi Mei always felt that once Xie Yuan found out that she was the one who stirred things up, he would not let her off. Chapter 1057. And today, even though Empress Xianda and Emperor Yongle unexpectedly let her off, Shen Miao did not investigate further. But the more Yi Mei thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong and suspected that they had a deeper conspiracy. Taking a step back, Yi Maokai would know about this matter sooner or later. She had mistakenly killed imperial concubine Jing and caused trouble. Yi Mei really did not know how such a shrewd person like Yi Maokai would treat her. Yi Mei's heart was filled with anger, fear, and frustration. Long Yi seemed to be her nemesis. When she was in Qinzhou, she could get whatever she wanted, but in Longyi she repeatedly ran into a wall. She originally thought that she would have a meteoric rise in the future if she connected with the Yi family. In the end, not only was the Yi family situation unclear, she had also offended someone she should not have offended. She could not stay in Longyi and had to leave the Yi family. Yi Mei's heart suddenly had this thought. She subconsciously glanced at Yi Hongguang. Yi Hongguang had his head lowered as he silently pulled at the fur of the blanket on his knees and did not see her gaze. Yi Mei's eyes suddenly turned cold. To escape from the Yi family, to escape from Long Yi, it was not an easy matter for her now. It was easy to get on the boat but hard to get off, and there was also Yi Maokai watching. But if she continued to stay here, Yi Mei had a feeling that she would not even know how she died. She had to properly discuss this with Yi Ke. Because of the delay of imperial concubine Jing's matter, it was already late when Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing returned to Prince Rui's residence. After bathing and eating, Shen Miao sorted out some letters on the table as she said to Xie Jingxing, "I did not expect that it was like this." Xie Jingxing's subordinates had come to deliver a message. They probably had figured out what had happened in the palace today. They probably guessed that Yi Mei had mistakenly killed Lu Jing. Shen Miao shook her head and said, "The Lu family probably knows that Yi Mei was the one who did it. They secretly hate her and will not show it." Xie Jingxing leaned on the couch as he watched her tidying up and said, "En?" Shen Miao asked, "Then what will the emperor do when he finds out the truth? Will he punish Yi Mei?" "So what if we can't find out?" Xie Jingxing said nonchalantly, "Even if Yi Mei didn't kill by accident, the Yi family wouldn't have kept her alive. Even if Yi Mei did kill by accident, Yi Maokai wouldn't feel bad about sacrificing a daughter that the Yi family took in halfway." Xie Jingxing shrugged. "Who cares about concubine Jing and the child in her belly?" Shen Miao sighed. Emperor Yongle hated the Yi clan to the core. He had no expectations for the child that Lu Jing tried so hard to conceive, so he naturally wouldn't care. Perhaps Lu Jing's death would even make Emperor Yongle feel relieved. He didn't love concubine Jing, but she was still his own flesh and blood. How could he face his own son when the Yi clan fell? Of course, this child was born with a congenital deficiency, so living in this world was a torture. The heavens had made the choice for him. Perhaps everything was predestined. Speaking of which, when I entered the palace today, something happened to Lu Jing. The emperor came but you were not around. What did you do? Shen Miao asked. She asked naturally as Xie Jingxing was a very frank person. As long as Shen Miao asked about the imperial family's secrets, he would answer. But today, he looked at Shen Miao and did not speak. Shen Miao was originally waiting for him to answer, but seeing that he did not respond, her hands paused and saw Xie Jingxing smiling at her. His gaze was very gentle, as if he saw her as something precious. Shen Miao was stunned and Xie Jingxing's lips curled up. Come here. She was stunned, and seeing Xie Jingxing's determined look, she stood up and walked to the side of the bed before asking, What's the matter? Xie Jingxing grabbed her wrist and pulled her into his embrace. Shen Miao was caught off guard as she laid in his embrace and struggled to prop herself up. Xie Jingxing did not let her move and rested his chin on her head as he lightly said, I once asked you a question. Do you still want to be the Empress? Do you remember? I remember. Shen Miao paused before replying. Then I will ask you again now. He said. I don't want to. Shen Miao said, My wish is very simple, to protect my loved ones and to live well. Being the Empress is good, but I don't like it. What should I do? He said with some distress, I also don't like it, but now I have to do it. The head of the Gao family said that imperial brother will not live for more than half a year. Today, he wrote the edict for succession. I don't believe in fate, but there is no time. He sighed softly and placed Shen Miao's hand in his palm. I know you don't like it, but can you bear with it for me? At least I can promise you that I will never let you become an empress. You will become the only woman of the Emperor of Daliang. The price you have to pay is, he leaned close to Shen Miao's ear and ruthlessly said, in this life, there is no way back. Chapter 1058. Shen Miao did not speak. However, Xie Jingxing did not let go of her and just locked her in his arms. After a long time, Shen Miao raised her head and looked at him. Xie Jingxing also stared at her. This arrogant man who looked as if he did not care about anything, had seen him walk from a naughty and mischievous youth to now. The cynicism in his eyes had never changed, but at this moment when he looked at her, there was a little bit of nervousness in his eyes. Shen Miao's heart moved, and in a short moment, she suddenly smiled. She said, Then what benefits do I have? Xie Jingxing was startled, and there was a touch of ecstasy in his eyes. He seemed to be relieved, but there was still some disbelief. He said, Whatever you want, I will give it to you. If what I want, you also want it? Shen Miao asked. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. What do you want? 13 capitals of Yuzhou. It belongs to you. He waved his hands, as if what Shen Miao said was just a little thing like rouge and face powder. Mo Bei Ding Yuan City. Shen Miao looked at his face. It belongs to you. Xie Jingxing did not even blink. Jiang Nanyu Province, Ding Shidong Hai, Lin and Qing Lake, Luo Yang Ancient City. All belong to you. Xie Jingxing answered smoothly and almost without thinking. If Emperor Yongle heard this, he would be so angry that he would vomit blood. If Emperor Xiaowu was here, he would also be so angry that he would point at Xie Jingxing's nose and scold him for being a wastrel and then charge Shen Miao as a country-wrecking demoness. But Xie Jingxing was not one who would care about other people's view. Of course, Shen Miao would not really snatch Xie Jingxing's empire. She only felt that Xie Jingxing had too much on his shoulders and hoped to distract his attention. It was good to make a little joke to make him feel more relaxed. All belong to me. What do you want? Shen Miao asked. Xie Jingxing laughed evilly and said mischievously, 13 times in one night? Shen Miao. Xie Jingxing pulled Shen Miao, who was about to leave, and said seriously, Fern, you cannot abandon me. Shen Miao said, You are so energetic. I will let Uncle Tang bring you some ice to cool down. Xie Jingxing pushed her down and said unhurriedly, With Furen here, what ice is needed? Outside, Song Yang covered his ears with a pained expression. It was Jingzhe who was passing by at the side who saw his appearance and came forward with good intentions. Guard Yang, why are you shaking so fiercely? Could it be that you're sick? As he spoke, he reached out to touch Song Yang's forehead. Song Yang was, after all, a young man, and he was forced to listen to a live erotic scene. Just as he was blushing, he was caught off guard by an ice-cold little hand covering his forehead, and he immediately jumped up from the ground. It made Jingzhe jump in shock. Jingzhe looked at her own hands. What happened? Song Yang looked at her as if he had seen a ghost. Suddenly, he rushed forward and ran away as if his butt was on fire, leaving Jingzhe in a daze at the same spot. Tai Yi, who was on the tree, saw everything that happened and did not say anything. He revealed a look of understanding in his heart as he sat quietly hugging his sword. Under the tree, Uncle Tang walked past. Seeing the closed door, he smacked his lips in satisfaction and went to instruct the kitchen to make soup. In the next few days, Xie Jingxing was really busy. Most likely it was because Emperor Yong Li's illness had worsened. Xie Jingxing had to personally run many things that the Lu and Yi families had to do personally, thus Xie Jingxing would leave early and return late. While Xie Jingxing was busy, Shen Miao was not idle. The Lu and Yi families had after all been in Long Yi for so many years. What the imperial family wanted to do now was to kill one as a warning to others, but they could not let the imperial family be too cruel, and in the future the officials would have disloyalty. Shen Miao shouldered these tasks and spoke to those noble Furins of Long Ye's officials, but also subtly passed some thoughts to them. Chapter 1059. These noble Furins looked like females, but in a residence, the role of females was indispensable. Originally, everyone thought that Shen Miao was after all a Ming-Chi person. Ming-Chi and the Great Liang were two different countries, and there were many different places. Shen Miao was a daughter of a military family, and it was even more impossible for her to have any insights. Who knew that after the exchange, Shen Miao had a huge change? Seeing that not only her words were appropriate, she also seemed to know a lot of things that they did not know. Speaking of clothing styles, Shen Miao could keep up. Speaking of the overall situation, Shen Miao could also keep up. She could even talk about those strange things that happened in the north and south of the Yangtze River. Originally in the inner palace of Ming-Chi in the last lifetime, even though she did not have a good life, at the end it increased her knowledge. Some of the envoys from other countries would also talk about some strange things. If one knew more, one would naturally be able to use it. When some things were used, there would be excellent results. The things that Xie Jingxing was able to do, Shen Miao might not be able to do it, but the intricate relationship of interests in politics and through quietly guiding to achieve one's goal was what Shen Miao was good at in this lifetime. In just a short few days, those noble Furins were all hot with Shen Miao, and when they hesitated on some matters, they would start to ask Shen Miao for advice. There was no lack of problems with the current situation. Firstly, Shen Miao was the Wang Fei of the residence of Prince Rui and was related to the imperial family. Thus they were able to know the current attitude of the imperial family. Secondly, even though Shen Miao was young and was even younger than some of the Furin's daughters, there was a special feeling about her. It was very gentle and settled down, making others feel that her words were trustworthy. Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing were working hard for the upcoming storm in Long Yi Palace. Of course, the Lu and Yi family did not sit still and wait for death. The Lu family had lost a daughter, and seeing Emperor Yong Li's attitude becoming more and more unyielding, they finally started to panic and started to mobilize the people that they privately raised. The Yi family was also watching from the sidelines at the start, but now they suddenly found themselves in a situation where they were not in control and seemed to have unknowingly been dragged into the water by the Lu family. Even though they did not do anything, the imperial family's attitude became subtle. From the beginning to the current indulgence, it seemed to explain something. Yi Mei's every move was secretly observed by Shen Miao and Mo Qing. These days, Yi Maokai was furious because of the disaster Yi Mei caused in Longye Palace. Yi Mei's actions had offended both Emperor Yonglu and the Lu family. The Lu family was easier to deal with. Although Lu Jingchun was arrogant, he had been living off his past gains for so many years. He did not have a brain. However, Emperor Yonglu was different. The young emperor already had thunderous methods. It was because he didn't blame Yi Mei that Yi Maokai felt even more uneasy. He felt that Emperor Yonglu was planning something. Yi Maokai vented his anger on Yi Mei, so he grounded Yi Mei for so many days and treated her coldly. Yi Mei had been very sullen these past few days. Today, Her confinement was finally lifted. In order to compensate her, Madame Yi brought her to her jewelry shop to choose some jewelry. Who knew that a noble would come to visit the Yi residence on the way? Madame Yi had no choice but to return. Since it was her family's shop, she wasn't afraid. She let Yi Mei pick her own jewelry from the shop and return after she was done. The shopkeeper of the jewelry shop had a fawning look and took out the most expensive items for Yi Mei to choose. Yi Mei's expression was absent-minded as she picked, which made the shopkeeper unable to help but feel a trace of anger. She was only a daughter of a merchant family, and now that the Yi family acknowledged her as their ancestor, it was already a great fortune. But she was still so picky and did not even take a liking to these jewelry. One did not know what kind of riches would enter her eyes. Chapter 1060. Yi Mei did not notice the shopkeeper's expression. She had been treated coldly by Yi Maokai for the past few days and was extremely angry. However, she also realized that the Yi family was not a place to stay for long. Yi Maokai was a person who prioritized his own interests. For his own interests, he could sacrifice her at any time. She originally wanted to use the Yi family to climb up, but who knew that she was not strong enough and could only be a chess piece. And the path that Yi Maokai had arranged for her was not enough for Yi Mei to get what she wanted. Her gaze swept over the dazzling jewelry, but her heart was thinking about how to escape, and if she could escape, where could she escape to? Just as she was thinking, two more people came to the jewelry shop. It was a man and a woman. The man was about 30 years old, dressed in luxurious clothes, had average looks, and was slightly plump. The woman was young, dressed in red and green. As soon as she came in, there was a strong fragrance. One look and one could tell that she was a brothel girl. The woman said sweetly, "Darren is buying bracelets with me, it must be made of gold." The man smiled and said generously, "Today you can pick whatever you want, this prince is in a good mood." It should be some young master who brought a girl from the brothel to be a sucker. The shopkeeper was already dissatisfied with Yi Mei's absent-minded state. Now that there was a new customer, he simply threw Yi Mei to the side and smiled as he placed the jewelry he had just given Yi Mei in front of the woman. He said with a smile, "These are all newly delivered, young lady can take a look." The woman squeezed to Yi Mei's side, and the fragrance made Yi Mei somewhat unhappy. She turned her head to look at the woman, and when she saw the man beside the woman, she could not help but be startled. The man also saw her and was stunned for a moment before exclaiming in pleasant surprise, "Meh." The woman who was picking jewelry raised her head and looked at Yi Mei warily. The shopkeeper also pricked up his ears. Since this person called Yi Mei, he naturally had an old friendship with Yi Mei. After all, Yi Mei was the daughter of a merchant. Yi Mei originally wanted to avoid his gaze and leave, but suddenly thought of something and her footsteps stopped. She looked at the shopkeeper again and suddenly said, "Since we've met, let's talk somewhere else." The man seemed to be very eager, and the woman beside him grabbed the man's arm and said, "Darren, you still have to accompany this servant to pick jewelry." The man was impatient, and directly grabbed a few banknotes from his bosom and threw them to the woman, saying, "See for yourself." After receiving the banknote, the woman no longer pestered him. The man and Yi Mei went out together. Yi Mei put on her veil and said, "Let's find a restaurant." In a certain elegant room in the restaurant, the man looked at Yi Mei and asked curiously, "Why do you have so many guards by your side? Back then, you and Brother Yi disappeared from Qin province without saying a word. I asked people to look for you for a long time, but I didn't expect you to be here." Yi Mei's heart was pounding. This man was none other than her childhood sweetheart. Back then, the Li family was a merchant family in Qinzhou, and this man was the eldest son of the Jin family, Jin Xingming. The Jin family was also a merchant family. Master Jin and Master Li had a good relationship. When Yi Mei was young, Jin Xingming was already a young man. Master Jin also joked about marrying Yi Mei to Jin Xingming. Yi Mei had been ambitious since she was young. Marrying a merchant woman was not her ultimate goal. But even though she hated Jin Xingming, she was very smart and never showed it to Jin Xingming. Instead, she was very considerate and obedient. She charmed Jin Xingming, worshipped her like a god, and loved her like a jewel. Later, the Li couple passed away, and the Li family's shops still needed the Jin family's care. Yi Mei was even more considerate to Jin Xingming. Master Jin was also planning to ask about her marriage. After all, the Li couple was not here, and the only one who could make the decision was Yi Mei herself. Yi Mei was naturally unwilling. In her heart, she would rather be an official's concubine than a merchant's wife. At this time, the Yi family appeared and hit it off. Yi Mei immediately came to Long Yi with Yi Mei. Because of her hatred for the Jin family, she didn't even say a word to the Jin family. Jin Xingming naturally didn't know that she had come to Long Yi. Who knew that they would meet here? Chapter 1061. Yi Mei quickly made up her mind and shook her head. She sighed and said, "When I was in the Li family, I was taken care of by the Jin family and had a good life with second brother. Who knew that someone would suddenly come to my door and say that my biological parents were someone else and that I was actually the daughter of Prime Minister Ye's family? I was bewildered, but they didn't give me time to explain and took me away." Prime Minister Ye's family? Jin Xingming cried out in shock. Is it that Prime Minister Yi of Longye? Yi Mei nodded and said, "But when I arrived, I found out that they had the wrong person. But you also know that the Yi family only has a bad young master. They were looking for a relative with great fanfare and got the wrong person. It wasn't good to slap their own face, so they forced me to be the daughter of the Yi family. I originally thought that this would be fine, but who knew that Prime Minister Yi was actually a beast in human skin? He wanted to use me as a bargaining chip in his career and use my marriage to rope others in." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she spoke. She was born beautiful, and now that she was acting like this, Jin Xingming's heart was broken. Jin Xingming said angrily, "How could he be like this? Even a biological daughter can't be so heartless. Not to mention that you are not his daughter, yet he tried in vain to seize your marriage. Damn it. Come, let's go report this to the authorities." "It's no use." Yi Mei shook her head. Officials protect each other. Not to mention that Yi Maokai covers the sky with one hand in Longya. I wanted to write to Qinzhou to ask for your help, but who knew that even the letter would be blocked? Actually, second brother and I have already been placed under house arrest by the Yi family. It is already rare for us to go out like this today." Jin Xingming's face was extremely ugly. He originally liked Yi Mei very much. When Yi Mei and her brother disappeared, Master Jin said that it was because Yi Mei didn't want to marry him, so she ran away. Jin Xingming was still a bit angry, but now that the beauty was crying, how could Jin Xingming still be angry? He could only curse himself in his heart. If only he had discovered Yi Mei's predicament earlier. Yi Mei raised her head and said, "In the past few days, I have been thinking about Big Brother Jin all the time. I only hope that one day I can regain my freedom. Big Brother Jin, can you help me?" Jin Xingming nodded repeatedly. "Help? What can I do?" "Big Brother Jin, I don't ask for anything else. I just want you to help me leave the Yi clan." Yi Mei smiled with tears in her eyes. "If I can be with Big Brother Jin, I won't have to live in fear every day." Jin Xingming's heart almost melted from Yi Mei's words. It must be known that although Yi Mei used to be very gentle to him, it was different now. She had never said anything. It was as if he was looking at her through a veil, making it hard for him to understand her attitude. But now, her words clearly showed that Yi Mei regarded him as a very important person. Although he was a little smug, Jin Xingming did not lose his rationality. The Yi family was the Prime Minister's family, and he was just a young master of the Shang family. He said, the Yi family is very troublesome." Yi Mei didn't say anything, she just looked at him with her beautiful eyes. Jin Xingming's heart shook and he said, "It is not that there is no way. Mei, do you know why I want to come to Longyi?" Yi Mei shook her head. She did not even care about Jin Xingming, and seeing Jin Xingming taking the initiative to talk to her today, it was to make use of him to leave the Yi family. How would she think of this layer? Jin Xingming proudly said, "I have a friend who is also a merchant. Last year he went to Mingqi and heard that this year he managed to build a relationship with the imperial merchant. Perhaps he would be able to get an official position. I thought about it, and instead of staying in Qin province as an ordinary merchant for a lifetime, it is better to go out and make a living. That friend also invited me along. I came to Long Yi to settle a few of the family's businesses and discussed with that friend. Chapter 1062. Originally I was still very hesitant. Jin Xingming said, "After all, father and mother are here, but now that I have met Mayor Yu, I have nothing to fear. I have decided to go to Mingqi's Ding capital. I did not think of becoming a high-ranking official, but there will definitely be more to earn." He said, "The Yi family's hand covers the sky, but if one were to escape to Mingqi, the Yi family's hand would not be able to stretch that far. What do you think, Mayor?" Yi Mei's heart moved, and when Jin Xingming was speaking, her mind was already calculating quickly. Even though there were some things that she had not thought clearly, she still smiled and said, "Naturally, it is very good. Older brother Jin, you are indeed Mayor's reliance. No one else in this world can be relied on. Luckily there is older brother Jin." She was delicate and gentle with a myriad of amorous feelings. Jin Xingming's heart jumped when he saw it and involuntarily reached out to touch Yi Mei's little hand. Yi Mei endured the disgust and allowed Jin Xingming to take advantage of her. If it was in the past, she would naturally disdain to do so, but now she had no choice but to compromise. Shen Miao just came out from a foreign's residence, and today she had also participated in a tea party. Those foreigners had gradually accepted Shen Miao's excuse of influencing them, and Xie Jingxing said that the court was much more stable now. She rubbed her neck and was about to board the carriage when she saw a male and female walking out from a tea house at the other end of the street. That female had a veil over her face and one could not see her face, but Shen Miao had dealt with her for a lifetime and was able to recognize that it was Yi Mei from her steps and posture. The male who was talking to Yi Mei seemed to have a very close relationship with her, but Shen Miao was very sharp. No matter if it was etiquette or style of doing things, it did not seem like a son of a noble family and revealed a vulgarity of a peddler. Perhaps he was a merchant or something. Shen Miao turned sideways and the shadow of the carriage blocked her so that Yi Mei could not see her. That male spoke a few more words to Yi Mei, and even though he did not do anything out of line, the relationship between the two seemed to be extraordinary. Yi Mei quickly boarded the carriage and left, and the male turned and walked in another direction. Shen Miao thought about it and instructed Mo Qing, "Follow that male and inquire about everything that he can." Mo Qing had been secretly monitoring Yi Mei these days, and since this male had a relationship with Yi Mei, it was natural for Shen Miao to let him inquire. Mo Qing received the orders and left. Shen Miao sat in the carriage, but her heart started to ponder. That male did not seem to have a noble background, and Shen Miao was very clear of Yi Mei's character. She placed great importance on nobility and would not speak to commoners. Yet, she went to the tea house with this man, and perhaps even sat down and drank tea. Yi Mei could always make use of everyone around her, especially men. Shen Miao almost immediately thought that perhaps Yi Mei wanted to make use of this man to achieve some goal, or else with her arrogant heart, she would not even bother to talk to such a lowly man. What does she want to do? Yi Mei returned to the Yi mansion in the evening. Yi Maokai, who usually came back very late, was unexpectedly early in the mansion today. Seeing her come in, he stared at her and asked, "Where did you go?" Perhaps it was because of the predicament that the Yi family was facing these days that even Yi Maokai, who had always been like a fish in water, began to feel troubled. His calm and contented air of a scholar had disappeared, and even his amiable appearance began to become gloomy. Yi Mei composed herself and said, "Mother wants me to go to the jewelry shop to pick some jewelry." "Mother?" Yi Maokai replied with a question. Yi Mei's heart was very unhappy with his eccentric tone. Yi Maokai clearly knew that he was not Yi Furen's flesh and blood, but at the start he wanted Yi Mei to pretend to be her. Now it was as if Yi Mei racked her brains to come to the Yi family to be a young lady. Chapter 1063. Seeing that Yi Mei did not speak, Yi Maokai asked again, "Jewelry?" Yi Mei said, "There was nothing that caught one's eye, so one did not pick." "You are very self-aware and know that you cannot take things that are not yours." Yi Maocai's words had a hidden meaning and suddenly changed the topic. "Who was the male that you met on the streets today?" Yi Mei was surprised for a moment and immediately felt anger. Needless to say, It was definitely the actions of the Yi residence's guards that followed her. On the surface those guards were protecting her safety, but in actual fact it was not so. Instead they were monitoring her and reporting her every move to Yi Maokai. Even so, Yi Mei did not dare to anger Yi Maokai and said, "It is a gentleman that I met in Qin province and had a deep relationship with my family. If father does not believe, you can send someone to investigate his background." Jin Mingxing was just a child of the Shang family, so even if Yi Maokai went to investigate, he would not be able to find anything. Yi Maokai saw that she was so calm and his expression relaxed before saying, "Do not think that I do not care about feelings. It is just that there will soon be a big movement in Longyi City. Since you are the daughter of the Yi family, your every move will be seen by others. If this brings disaster to the Yi family, you and the Yi family will suffer." He then pretended to smile warmly. "Since you are a smart child, you should know what to do and what not to do. You and the Yi family are together, so naturally you have to help each other." When Yi Mei heard Yi Maocai's words, her heart sank and guessed that Yi Maokai was definitely using her to achieve something. She had a plan in her heart, and after a few perfunctory words with Yi Maokai, she then returned to her room. Upon returning to the room, she discovered that Yi Ku was already waiting in the room. Yi Ku saw that she had returned and smiled. "Older sister, where did you go today? Why did you only return now? I have waited for you for a long time." Yi Mei was upset and wanted to tell Yi Ku about Jin Mingxing. Initially in Qin province, Yi Ku actually hoped that Jin Mingxing would be his brother-in-law, as the Jin family could take care of the Li family. It was just that at that time Yi Mei did not look up to Jin Mingxing, and Yi Ku persuaded her for a long time, saying that Jin Mingxing would treat her well. Now if she were to escape to Mingqi with Jin Mingxing, naturally Yi Ku would bring Yi Ku along. But Yi Mei could not predict Yi Ku's attitude. "Do you remember Jin Xingming from the Jin family in Qinzhou?" "Jin Xingming?" Yi Ku looked at her suspiciously. "Yes, why did you suddenly mention him?" Suddenly, she thought of something and was shocked. She stood up and said, "Sister, don't tell me you've suddenly thought it through and want to marry him now." Yi Mei frowned. "Didn't you like him at first? We used to be merchants, but now we are officials." Yi Ku said, "Sister, with your current status, how can Jin Xingming send you? A merchant family marrying an official's daughter. If this gets out, I'm afraid people will laugh their heads off." He seemed very excited. Yi Mei looked at him for a while and asked, "Then who do you think I should marry?" "Not Yi. Jin with Mei. He Jin is said. With Prince." He moved closer mysteriously and said with a smile, "Actually, father wants you to enter the palace. I've seen it for you. The emperor is young and handsome, and is cold to the empress. If you enter the palace, with your beauty and talent, one fear that the 6 palaces will be in your pocket. At that time, you and I, sister and brother, will be rich and powerful." Yi Ku's eyes shone as he spoke, as if he was yearning for the future, like a person who had dug for a long time and finally saw a treasure. "Oh." Yi Mei looked at him. "You really think so? Older sister, when did you become so unconfident?" Yi Ku patted his chest and said, "Believe me, you will definitely become the most distinguished woman in Great Liang. So listen to father and enter the palace. Father will not harm you. After entering the palace, there is still the Yi family behind you. If this is not a great thing, what is it?" Yi Mei smiled, but that smile was somewhat strange. She said, "Second younger brother, these days you seem to be very busy. Can you tell older sister what you are busy with?" "Father is planning to find an official position for me in Longyi." Yi Ku's eyebrows danced as he said, "These days, he is bringing me around to see colleagues." Just as he finished speaking, he suddenly realized something and stopped talking. He looked at Yi Mei with some panic. Yi Mei's expression did not change as she nodded and said, "So it is like that." Chapter 1064. So that's how it is. Yi Ku carefully looked at Yi Mei. Seeing that Yi Mei didn't seem to have any special reaction, he sighed in relief. He probed, "Jia, do you feel it's not good?" "Not good?" Yi Mei looked at him in astonishment and then laughed. "What's wrong with that? After entering the palace, it will be a life of glory and splendor, a life of riches and splendor. Do you think I'm so stupid that I'd give away the riches and splendor that are within my reach? She said, I originally wanted to marry someone with a high position. The emperor is the noblest person in the world. There is naturally nothing bad about being the emperor's woman. As she spoke, Yi Mei regained her flirtatious appearance from before, as if she agreed with what Yiku said. Seeing this, Yiku clapped his hands and said with a smile, I told you. Father was afraid that you wouldn't agree before and wanted me to persuade you. I knew that he was making an unnecessary move. Such a good thing, Jie will naturally agree. You're not an idiot, how can you refuse? He relaxed and actually revealed the reason why he came to persuade Yi Mei on Yi Maocai's orders. Yi Mei's eyes flashed and she said with a smile, Father probably doesn't understand me, but you are my deity, don't you understand me? Jie, say, if you enter the palace and receive the emperor's favor, don't forget me, your deity. Yiku said, now that father has brought me into the officialdom, with the help of you, my path will only become smoother. Maybe, the people of Long Yi will listen to us siblings. At that time, we will get wind, we will get rain, we will be very proud. As to that nuisance Empress, she's just a decoration. Right now, even that Jing Fei who is pregnant with the dragon seed is gone. If you enter the palace, who in the palace can be your match? It will be smooth sailing. Yi Mei also smiled, naturally so. Yiku seemed to be very satisfied with Yi Mei's guarantee and finally resolved his worries. After talking for a while, he excitedly discussed with Yi Mei how he should walk his path of officialdom before leaving. After Yiku left, Yi Mei's expression became cold. It was not surprising that Yi Maocai had bought over Yiku so quickly. What Yiku had hoped for the most in his life was to hold power in his hands and summon the wind and summon the rain. Yi Maocai drew a picture for Yiku, and Yiku was moved. This was enough for Yiku to sacrifice his sister. Moreover, in Yiku's eyes, entering the palace to be the emperor's woman was probably a good thing that could not be asked for, but he did not know that there was danger at every step. This was because Emperor Yonglu was too difficult to control, and there was also the clear-headed Prince Rui watching from the side. Yiku and Yi Mei were the same. They were both extremely selfish people. When faced with their own interests, brotherly affection was nothing. Thinking about it, if Yiku knew that Yi Mei going to be the emperor's woman was not that good, he would not change his mind, because his own career was more important. But how could Yi Mei be willing to pave the way for Yiku? After Yiku left, Yi Mei stood up and paced around the room twice, which made her look a little anxious. But she also understood that Yiku was now her enemy in some ways. She thought for a long time and finally stood up as if she had made up her mind, but she opened the box in the room. That was the tens of sets of clothes that Madame Yi had made for her when she came back. They were all fashionable styles and the material was also the best. Yi Mei squatted down in front of the box and began to seriously choose. On the other side, Shen Miao also heard the news that Mo Qing had said. Jin Xingming? Shen Miao asked with a frown. Other than his identity as the son of a shop, there is nothing special about him. Mo Qing said, but he suddenly came to Long Yi from Qingzhou. He seemed to be dealing with a few businesses, all of which were the Jin family's long-term businesses. To deal with it like this, it indicates that the Jin family will not accept any business in the next few years. Chapter 1065. Not planning to accept business? Jingzhi could not help but ask, then what to eat? It seems that he is preparing to leave. Shen Miao muttered, then is there any news that Jin Xingming has recently left? Mo Qing was startled for a moment before saying, Furin's guess is correct. He also sold some things and converted them into banknotes. It seems that he is going on a long journey and had prepared a large amount of money. Shen Miao understood, go and check again to see if this Jin Xingming has any recent connections with anyone. Also some clothes that he prepared. Clues can be seen as to where he is going and the things that he prepared for travel. A short journey is still a long journey, the northern land is still the southern country. If there are people that are close to him, pay more attention. Also do not relax the investigation on Yi Mei siblings. If Jin Xingxing and Yi Mei have private dealings, one must follow. Mo Qing received the orders and left. Jingzhe and Gu Yu were sewing clothes under the lamp when Gu Yu said, "Furin, but what relationship does that Yi family's young lady have with the son of a merchant? Could it be that she is fond of that young Master Jin, so she did not even care about the other's merchant identity and insisted on being together with him?" Shen Miao gently smiled and shook her head. "Do you know about rattan grass?" "This servant knows." When Jingzhe heard it, she quickly said, "When this servant lived in the countryside, there were rattan grass everywhere in the courtyard. Once spring arrives, one must pull them out one by one. If they were not pulled out, they would entangle the other trees to death." Shen Miao said, "Yi Mei is very much like that rattan grass." Yi Mei was very much like rattan grass. This rattan grass had a strong vitality and was everywhere. The most important thing was that any man could become her tree, and she would rely on these trees to climb upwards, absorbing the sunlight and rain, growing tenaciously until she climbed to the tallest one. And in the process of her growth, those trees would be entangled by her until they were exhausted of their nutrients and finally died. Jingzhe and Gu Yu looked at each other in dismay. After a long while, Jingzhe softly said, "Is she that powerful?" "This kind of rattan grass looks very strong at first glance, but there is a fatal characteristic." Shen Miao said, "Once her last tree dies, there would be no other things that could provide her with nutrients and she would follow along. What to rely on would be the most miserable when it is finally taken away." She said. There was no doubt that Yi Mei wanted something from Jin Xingming. As the son of a merchant, since he had finished his business everywhere and seemed to be leaving, it was obvious that Yi Mei wanted to board Xing Xingming's boat and leave the abyss of the Yi family. But how would Shen Miao let her wish come true? Yi Mei's ending, this time let Shen Miao decide it for her. For a few days, Xie Jingxing did not return to the residence. Even Tai Yi was not around. When she asked Song Yang, he did not know anything. She felt that the guards in the Fu were even busier than usual. Not long after, a piece of news came from the capital. The former General Zhenan, Lu Jingchun, led his troops in rebellion. He stationed his troops in Riyang City and occupied the city as a prison. He was officially opposing the royal family. This news shocked the people of Longyi. They had heard that Lu Jingchun already had many soldiers under him. In addition, he had been secretly recruiting soldiers and buying horses for so many years, expanding his military strength. Riyang City was vast to begin with, so it was surprising that he could occupy it so easily. The Lu family indeed had the courage to go against the royal family. The Shen family's guards that Shen Miao brought over were somewhat bewildered, but Shen Miao was neither fast nor slow. There was an ancient saying that first suppress then raise. Most likely Xie Jingxing and Emperor Yonglu wanted to do this. First let the Lu family have a taste of sweetness. Lu Jingchun, that kind of martial artist, would naturally feel that the imperial family was afraid of him and would lower their guard and become more arrogant. This would then allow the imperial family to make better arrangements and catch the Lu family in one fell swoop. Chapter 1066. Even though she had confidence in Xie Jingxing, Shen Miao did not think that the Lu family had the ability to contend against the Xie family. What Shen Miao was worried about was another matter. Although the Lu family was arrogant, they were only targeting the imperial family. In the eyes of the common people, the Lu family was just like the Xie family in the past. Even though it was a rebellion, the Lu family had their mouths. The first thing they said was that the imperial family had forced them to rebel. They even said that the death of Emperor Xiaowu had something to do with Emperor Yongla. They said that Empress Dowager Jingxian was a relative who monopolized power and conspired with Emperor Yongla and his mother to kill Emperor Xiaowu and the other princes. The world was in an uproar. It was true that when Emperor Xiaowu passed away, Empress Xiao dealt with the rest of the princes one by one in a thunderous manner. Naturally, she did not leave any evidence behind. But in the eyes of some people, it was strange. The common people were also like this. Just that even though they had suspicions, they did not dare to speak it out. Afterwards, Empress Dowager Jingxian passed away and Emperor Yonglu succeeded the throne. Under his rule, Great Liang prospered, so no one mentioned the past again. However, this did not mean that the people had completely forgotten about this matter. On the contrary, When the Lu family's words came out, after the commoners of the Great Liang were shocked, they started to hesitate. A small portion of the commoners really believed the Lu family's words, but the majority of the commoners were skeptical. However, if an emperor could not make the people submit to him, it would always be a disaster in the future. Just like Empress Xiao in the past, even though she did it cleanly and efficiently, she also brought trouble to Emperor Yongle. Even if Emperor Yongle used thunderous methods to shut the mouths of the commoners and cut off the rumors in the marketplace, there was still a path to walk. Was he going to use such methods to suppress the rumors for the rest of his life? The Lu family is really too shameless. Jingzhi said, they actually dare to splash dirty water onto the emperor. Gu Yu sighed, since it is a rebellion, it is either you die or I live. What is the point of pouring a basin of dirty water? He continued, the Lu family is really ruthless. They want both sides to suffer, and they want to drag the royal family into this. Even if they win, they might not win the hearts of the people in the future. Shen Miao frowned and thought for a moment before saying, bring a pen and paper. She then walked to the table. Jingzhi was surprised for a moment before asking, Fern, want to write a letter back to Mingqi? Shen Miao shook her head, I need a very big piece of paper, bigger than the notice of the prisoners at the city gates. Jingzhi and Gu Yu had seen Shen Miao's writing before. It was when she sent the letter to Mingqi or when she sent the news to Pei Lang. It was just that at that time Shen Miao was calm and did not see anything wrong with it. But the Shen Miao today looked different. She was solemn, as if she was writing about something important that weighed more than 1,000 caddies. She was also agitated, reminding one of the older students in the Hanlin Academy who argued with the group of scholars. In the end, he wrote faster and faster. He practically didn't need to think, and he wrote fluently in one go. Putting down the brush, he picked up the huge piece of white paper with both hands and shook it, as if he wanted to shake it dry. Jingzhi and Gu Yu leaned over to take a look and saw that there were black words on that huge piece of white paper. Shen Miao's words were soft and mellow, but the words at the top had a hidden sharpness, as if a sharp sword was going to jump out from the paper and pierce into one's heart. What is this? The two maids were illiterate but faintly felt that this was a very important thing. No one cares about the truth, Shen Miao said, but the result is very important. She dried the paper again and again until the ink was completely dry before she said to Jingzhi, bring this thing to the bookstore and make 3,000 copies. Then let the guards in the residence post it everywhere during the night. Shen Miao said, be quick. Chapter 1067. Gu Yu Jingzhi did not dare to delay and complied. She carefully carried the paper that was filled with words out of the door. Shen Miao looked at the back view of the two people leaving and gently sighed in relief. In this world, martial arts could determine the universe, while literature could bring peace to the world. Since the Lu family wanted to use this opportunity to stir up trouble, they might as well take the initiative to boost their own morale. The path of civil and military affairs had always been the same. His Lu family had their tongues in a mess, but she also had her treacherous path of military affairs. It was still unknown who would emerge victorious. Not only did he want the Lu family to lose, he wanted the Lu family to lose so badly that they had to hold their breath. That night, Xie Jingxing still did not return. Shen Miao dressed and ate alone, and managed the residence of Prince Rue in an orderly manner. From time to time, she would go to the noble Furin's small gatherings in the Ding capital and quietly calm their emotions. It was only when she was sleeping at night that she felt a little cold. After thinking for a while, Xie Jingxing covered himself with the quilt and closed his eyes to sleep. Early the next morning, when the sunlight of Long Yi shone on every corner of the city, some sharp-eyed people noticed that there was a piece of white paper pasted on the door of the house. On it, there was a large piece of densely packed words written on it. The owner was a butcher and didn't understand. Coincidentally, he saw his neighbor, Scholar Ma, walking past and said, Scholar Ma, you're a scholar. Why don't you take a look at this? Scholar Ma walked to the door of the butcher's shop and saw the calligraphy. He first sighed and said, good calligraphy. Then he leaned closer and read it word by word, a letter to all my fellow countrymen. In just a short span of a few days, the letter to inform the world to his compatriots had spread to all the streets and alleys. Even the other places of the Great Liang knew about it. The snow-white pieces of paper were everywhere. Most of the scholars kept them in their bosoms, but most of them wanted to get a closer look at the person who wrote it. The young people in the Hanlin Academy were reading the book. In the past, when the dynasty was weak, it was still able to live peacefully. Now that it is prosperous, why would it be chaotic? His Majesty is at hand, the granaries are full, the weather is good, and today, as a traitor, you suspect your master, rebel against your Majesty, go against reason, and overstep your Tao. Are you ashamed? Are you ashamed? How disloyal, unjust, and heartless. The scholar was surrounded by a large group of students. When they heard this, they all revealed expressions of shame, but there were also some who were enraged. This book first talked about the recent rebellion of the Liu clan. First, it scolded the traitors of the Liu clan for committing such a treacherous and heinous act. Then, it said that the traitors spread rumors. This rumor was actually believed by many people. It was truly chilling. During the reign of Emperor Yongle, the people of Great Liang lived and worked in peace and contentment. The country was prosperous and the people were at peace. It was even better than when Emperor Xiaowu was on the throne. The people did not consider the benevolence and merits of the emperor, but listened to the lies of a traitor. Were they not ashamed? Aren't you blushing? He also talked about the way of literature and martial arts. The Great Liang had many talented people. There were scholars and there were military examinations. The ones who passed the military examination should think of ways to resist the treacherous officials and serve the Junju. The scholars should even more seriously listen and not add oil to the fire. This letter to the fellow citizens of the world was brilliant and incisive. Even if one disregarded its political views, it was still a top-notch work. Moreover, what he said was extremely reasonable. It made people not only feel ashamed but also reflect on it. As for the rumors of the Liu clan, it collapsed on its own. Emperor Yongle was such a good emperor and was so kind to the people, not to mention the court officials. Since the Liu clan rebelled, they were definitely not loyal. It was a pity that they were almost incited by ignorance, and it was really too shameful. Those scholars felt ashamed and also felt that the person who wrote this book was definitely a talented person and wanted to make friends with him. Unfortunately, they could not find the person behind the scenes. As for those young students who passed the military examination, their heart to serve the country was stirred up by this book. They could not wait to join the troops to attack the Liu clan and personally behead the traitor. Chapter 1068. Thus the matter of Emperor Yongle killing his father and usurping the throne was no longer mentioned by anyone. Song Yang had pasted up the notice for an entire night and did not expect that there would be so many people responding to it, and even more did not expect that the matter of the rumors would be resolved so easily. He was full of admiration toward Shen Miao and said, "Furin, this move of yours is comparable to those scholars in the palace. One had never seen these scholars chasing after a person like this. If they knew of Furin's identity, they would definitely be extremely surprised." Shen Miao smiled. The Liu family is currently in Riyang and do not care about Long Ye's matters. At most they would arrange for some people to spread rumors among the commoners. But the commoners of the Great Liang are not fools. Two lies, one is groundless and the other is well-founded. Which one would you believe? Song Yang pondered. However, that is because the commoners' hearts are more inclined towards His Majesty, so it was easy to pull them over. If the Liu family obtained the hearts of the people, their position would be indestructible, and with these rumors, it would be futile even if I write 10 of these things. Song Yang scratched his head. No matter what, Furin had made a good move. When Master returns, he would definitely be very happy. Moreover, Furin originally came out from the general residence, and one did not expect to have such talent. Shen Miao declined to comment. Talent? The letter to fellow countrymen to the world was just a letter to deceive the people of the world. One's heart needed to be managed, and if the Liu family wanted to, naturally they would be able to do it. At the beginning, when Fu Xiuyi ascended to the throne, There were naturally doubts, but it was Pei Lang who relied on the letter to fellow countrymen to turn black into white, washing Fu Xiu clean and not a demon, making him the one and only wise ruler of Ming-Chi. Now she used this move on the Lu family. A tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. It was impossible for the Lu family to destroy the imperial family's reputation because of this. At the same time, in a small town in the Great Liangzhong state, a green-clad male was walking on the streets with his hands behind his back. The place he passed by happened to have a school, and the teacher in that school was an old man over 60 years of age. He was shaking his head as he read, "In the past, when the dynasty was weak, it was still peaceful. Now that it is prosperous, why is there chaos? His Majesty is at hand, the granaries are full, the weather is good, and today, as a traitor, you suspect your master, rebel against your Majesty, go against reason, and overstep your Tao. Are you ashamed? Are you ashamed? How disloyal, unjust, and heartless." The green-robed man stopped in his tracks and involuntarily looked in that direction. After the old man read a paragraph, he said, "This is the widely circulated letter to fellow brethren to the world, in Longyi. This old man only has one copy. Make a copy of it and hand it in tomorrow." Pei Lang was stunned for a moment. Then he thought of something and couldn't help but laugh softly. After laughing for a while, his eyes dimmed again. He glanced at the headmaster who was shaking his head and left. In Wei Yang Palace, Empress Xianda was also holding a letter in her hand. She smiled and read it to Emperor Yonglu. Emperor Yonglu sat on the chair. His face was slightly pale, but his expression was unprecedentedly gentle. "Jing Xing has really married a treasure." Empress Xianda smiled and said, "I thought she was a female general from a family of generals, but she is a female Zhuangyuan who can disturb people's hearts. Now the schools in Longyi are secretly investigating who the person who wrote this letter is, but they don't know that it is a woman." Emperor Yonglu snorted softly and said, "Sly as a fox. She is helping you." Empress Xianda was unconcerned and said, "Thanks to her, the messy rumors outside have all died down. Isn't that good?" "I don't care," Emperor Yonglu said. Empress Xianda said, "You don't care, but you have to plan for Jing Xing and the rest." Chapter 1069. Emperor Yonglu did not speak. After a while, Emperor Yonglu called out, "Qingxin?" Empress Xianda replied with a Suddenly, she was stunned and turned to look at Emperor Yonglu. Qingxin was her maiden name, but she had not heard anyone call her this name for a long time. Emperor Yonglu did not look at her, but focused on the incense burning in his mouth. He asked, "Do you regret it?" Empress Qingxin smiled, "I have never regretted it. After I die, follow Jing Xing. If you meet someone good, remarry." Emperor Yonglu said, "Change your name, change your identity. You'll be fine. You'll have a good life." Empress Xianda's eyes welled up with tears. She forced them down and looked at Emperor Yonglu. "In your Majesty's eyes, am I so unworthy?" She seemed to have thought of something and laughed at herself. "That's true. In your Majesty's eyes, I have never been important." With that, she stood up and said to Emperor Yonglu, "I understand. I will do as your Majesty wishes." She took the lead and left. Aunt Tao saw this and wanted to persuade her, but in the end, she could not. Empress Xianda had a good temperament and did not seem to have anything to be angry about. After living with Emperor Yonglu for so many years, she had never blushed with him. Today was the first time she lost her temper at him. Emperor Yonglu looked at the burning incense. Half of the incense had turned to dust. The fragrance that lingered in the air would dissipate one day. It was like a person's memory and affection. Yi Mei dressed up for a long time in the room. She was already very beautiful. Ever since she came to the Yi residence, with Madame Ye's nourishment, she should have become even more beautiful. But for some reason, she did not feel as radiant as she was when she first came. Perhaps there was already a hint of fatigue on his face. Today, she spent a long time in the house before finally choosing a peach-pink chiffon dress. The dress was embroidered with peach blossoms. She then carefully groomed and dressed herself up. Her eyes sparkled and she gave off the feeling of a stunningly beautiful woman. When she walked out of the door, She happened to meet Yi Ke. Yi Ke looked at her in surprise and asked, "Sister, where are you going?" "Going to Miss Sun's residence to drink tea," Yi Mei said with a smile. Yi Ke did not suspect anything. Moreover, the Yi family's guards were following them. Yi Mei brought the guards out of the door. She put on her veil and really went to Miss Sun's residence. Even though the Su clan's official position in Long Yi wasn't high, they weren't commoners either. Yi Mei entered the Sun residence and was led to a small room by someone. When she entered the small room, she saw Jin Xingming, who had been waiting for a long time. When Jin Xingming saw Yi Mei, his eyes lit up and revealed a look of amazement as he said with some infatuation, "Mei, or you are really becoming more and more beautiful." The more disgusted Yi Mei felt, the sweeter the smile on her face. She said in an aggrieved manner, "It was not easy to go out today. I almost thought that I would not be able to see Brother Jin. If it weren't for the old friendship between me and Big Brother's son, who sent you an invitation in the name of his sister, I'm afraid it wouldn't have been easy to meet you." Jin Xingming sighed. Yi Mei said with a smile, "It's all Brother Jin's ability." Her words were sweet and her face pretty, making Jin Xingming's heart burst with joy. Just as he was feeling happy, he suddenly heard Yi Mei say, "But when will Brother Jin take me out of the Yi residence? I really don't want to stay in the Yi residence a moment longer." Jin Xingming said, "Even so, we still need to plan carefully. After all, the Yi family isn't a small family. We need to think of a foolproof plan." Yi Mei laughed coldly in her heart. There was no foolproof plan in the world. It was just Jin Xingming's evasion. It seemed that he had secretly investigated the Yi residence and knew of Yi Maocai's power, so he retreated. She raised her face and said pitifully, "If this drags on, when will there be an end? I don't ask for anything. I don't want the Yi family's wealth. I just want to live happily with Brother Jin." Not many men could resist such sweet words, not to mention that the person who spoke was a rare beauty in the world. Her eyes were moving, her words were soft, and every move was teasing as if it was a silent invitation. Jin Xingming felt that his throat was somewhat dry, but he saw Yi Mei licking her lips even more helplessly. He couldn't bear it anymore and didn't continue to bear it. He suddenly grabbed Yi Mei's hand and impulsively said, "For Mei, I naturally am not afraid of anything. But Mei is so beautiful, how can my heart be held in the palm of Mei's hand?" He used some more strength and hugged Yi Mei tightly in his arms, saying, "Mei, if you become mine, I will definitely save you as soon as possible." Yi Mei wanted to vomit, but that hesitation only lasted for a short moment. Her mind was quickly calculating some things, and in the next moment, her hands were like snakes as they climbed around Jin Xingming's neck. She breathed into his ear and said, "Okay." Chapter 1070. The night was short, and if it was during the day, one would feel that it was not enough. The mosquito net was filled with a charming smell, and after a long while, there was the sound of clothes being worn. Jin Xingming caressed Yi Mei's smooth back, and there was still some satisfaction on his face as he said, "Mei, why not stay with me for a while? The sky is not dark yet. Why return so early?" Yi Mei's back was facing Jin Xingming, and there was a trace of anger in her eyes, but when she turned her head around, her eyes were overflowing with charm as she smiled. "Since older brother Jin cannot bear to part with me, then quickly bring me out of the Yi family. Yi Maocai keeps me under tight control, and these days he often urges me to enter the palace. If I were to enter the palace, then I would not be fated to be with older brother Jin in this lifetime." When Jin Xingming heard that Yi Mei wanted to enter the palace, he immediately sat up straight and said, "Cannot." If it was in the past, Jin Xingming would not know the taste of Yi Mei, but now that he had flipped the Luan and Phoenix upside down, he could not bear to let go. He simply wanted to die on Yi Mei's body, and if he were to meet other females in the future, he would have turned into a block of wood. A man's entire life was nothing more than money, power, and sex. After eating fine rice, it was hard to eat cornbread. Jin Xingming was not willing to hand Yi Mei over to others, so naturally he was anxious. Yi Mei snuggled into his embrace and softly said, "Naturally I am not willing. I only have older brother Jin in my heart, but now I have no choice but to do so. So I want to leave quickly, and when older brother Jin and I reach Mingqi, We can be a pair of celestial companions and be free and unfettered every day. The beauty was affectionate and righteous, and Jin Xingming got a sweet taste, so his heart was complacent. In a moment of lofty sentiments, he said, "That is right. Today I will get people to prepare the things, and to ensure safety, we will take the waterway route. This waterway route is hidden, and even though it is dangerous, it is faster than other routes." Yi Mei nodded her head. "In order to prevent Yi Maokai from having any suspicions, we will meet here 5 days later. Before that, older brother Jin should settle the matters of leaving so that I can deal with the people of the Yi residence." Jin Xingming complied, and the two of them tangled together for a while before Yi Mei tidied up her clothes and walked out of the door as if nothing had happened. She left the Sun family's mansion and got on the carriage. The guards of the Yi mansion saw that she was fine, so they didn't think much about it. Yi Mei boarded the carriage and lifted up her sleeves. Her fair, jade-like arms were mottled with red marks. Jin Xingming was impatient and rude. Yi Mei was also exhausted. She looked at him for a while and put down her sleeves. She had always been a greedy person, but today she had given herself to someone like Jin Xingming. All of this was thanks to Yi Maokai. If Yi Maokai hadn't tricked her into boarding a pirate ship, she wouldn't have ended up like this. Since she was going to leave the Yi residence had to give her some compensation. Otherwise, wouldn't all these days of compromising have been in vain? A trace of ruthlessness flashed in her eyes. 5 days later, Xie Jingxing returned. In the Battle of Ruyang City, the Lu clan was utterly defeated. For so many years, the Lu family had thought that they had been recruiting soldiers and buying horses, secretly accumulating their strength. Little did they know that their opponents were the same. Even his opponents were more diligent than him. From the day Emperor Yongle ascended the throne, they started to plan on how to pull the Lu family down. After so many years of planning, how could the Lu family be able to compete with them? And the true power that Emperor Yongle had revealed shocked some of the officials in court, as if a bucket of cold water was poured over their heads. They finally understood that the young emperor that was suppressed by Emperor Xiao Wu and had to rely on Empress Dowager Jingxian's support, had unknowingly grown into a ferocious beast. Lu Jingchun was a madman. When Ruyang City was breached, he knew that the situation was hopeless, and when he had no other choice, he rushed into the house and personally slaughtered his wife and daughter, including Lu Wan, whom he had always doted on. At that time Gao Yang and Jiu Shu were also present and saw that Lu Wan's eyes widened as she slowly fell down, as if she did not think that she would die in her father's hands at the last moment. Chapter 1071. Xie Jingxing ended Lu Jingchun. When Lu Jingchun died, he laughed maniacally and shouted, "This old one was unrivaled in one's entire life and now die in the hands of a brat. Not reconciled." Xie Jingxing chopped off his head and said lightly, "Ignorant." At this point, the Lu family that had occupied the Great Liang for 2 dynasties disappeared without a trace. The remaining forces of the Lu family fled in all directions and were all killed by the Mou army. When Shen Miao heard these, she was very emotional. The rise and fall of an aristocratic family looked very simple, but in fact there were signs a long time ago. The Lu family was arrogant and had rebellious thoughts, so the imperial family did not spare any effort to kill them. Xie Jingxing said, "But when I returned, I heard that there was a book to inform the world that was circulating in the marketplace." He looked at Shen Miao and his lips hooked up. "All the scholars in the world want to get to know one another. One do not know which scholar or hero is it." Shen Miao held back her laughter. "Do not know. One have to let the Mou army search." Xie Jingxing raised his brows. "If found, if it is a male, then becomes sworn brothers. If it is a female, then what?" Shen Miao stared at him coldly, as if he was not satisfied with her answer, she would sharpen her knife. Xie Jingxing said seriously, "Drag them out and behead them. Who is so bold to dare to be more talented than my Furin?" Shen Miao could not hold back her laughter. Xie Jingxing saw her smile like a blooming magnolia, gentle and pretty, and his heart moved. He suddenly stood up and carried her horizontally and walked to the bedside to put her down. Shen Miao struggled. "You have not bathed. Do not move. Let me carry for a while." He turned over and Shen Miao laid on top of him. Xie Jingxing hugged her and buried his face in her shoulder. Shen Miao was somewhat tickled by his breath but heard him say, Ming Qi might be fighting over. Shen Miao was startled and spoke suspiciously, What? Lu Jingchun revealed Imperial older brother's secret before he died. Xie Jingxing's voice did not have any joy or anger as he said, It seems that Fu Xiuyi also know. Fu Xiuyi would not miss this opportunity. Actually, before Lu Jingchun died, he said to Xie Jingxing, Make a guess. When will the Emperor of Mingqi know that your short-lived eldest brother will not live past this year? Shen Miao was surprised. How did Lu Jingchun know? It's hard to guard against family thieves day and night. Moreover, the palace is complicated. It's possible that it came from the palace. Xie Jingxing said, The Lu family should want to use this information to threaten Imperial older brother, but one did not know why they changed their mind and chose to inform Fu Xiuyi. Treason? Shen Miao frowned. Not considered. Xie Jingxing said, With Lu Jingchuan's personality, it should be a life and death struggle. When Shen Miao heard it, she somewhat agreed. Previously, Lu Jingchun had even put up posters everywhere saying that Emperor Yongle had killed the emperor and seized the throne in order to destroy the reputation of the imperial family. At that time, he did not reveal the secret that Emperor Yongle did not have long to live. Perhaps it was because he wanted to keep this secret. In the end, it would become his trump card, the final fatal blow. It was just that Lu Jingchun was not a person who could keep his composure. He did not know how Xie Jingxing had provoked him. Perhaps he felt that the Xie family was powerless to reverse the situation, so he might as well tell Xie Jingxing this news before he died. Shen Miao said, Correct. It is indeed impossible for Fu Xiuyi to give up this opportunity. Fu Xiuyi's character was good at seizing the people, things and opportunities that he could make use of. Perhaps from his point of view, once an emperor who did not have long to live had an accident, the great Liang would definitely be in chaos, so it would be the best time to go to war. She thought for a while, it is just that the current Ming Qi does not have the qualifications to go against the great Liang. Fu Xiuyi must have done something secretly and would only take action after he had enough confidence. Chapter 1072. Xie Jingxing said, Before that, first clean up the Yi family. Yi family? Shen Miao said, You plan to wipe out the entire Yi family in one fell swoop. Xie Jingxing snapped his fingers. Why not keep them for the new year? I will settle the Yi siblings and gift them to you. You can deal with them however you want. Shen Miao took his hand over. Xie Jingxing's wrist was still tied with her red rope as she said, You must be careful. Xie Jingxing and Shen Miao's conjecture about Fu Xiuyi was confirmed on the second day. No one thought that Fu Xiuyi would be so impatient that it could be said that he did not care about anything. Shen Qiu's family letter arrived. It was different from the previous letters. Most of the previous letters would be about Shen Xian and the rest's daily life, to show Shen Miao that they were living well. But this letter looked very sloppy. It was obvious that the letter was written in a hurry. Looking at the time, it was a long time ago, which meant that a lot of time was wasted when the letter reached Shen Miao's hands. Opening the letter, Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing read 10 lines at a glance and after reading it, they were silent. Fu Xiuyi made his move. It was not that he was firing at the great Liang, but at the Shen family. Emperor Wenhui was seriously ill and entrusted Fu Xiuyi with full authority to supervise the court matters. Fu Xiuyi fabricated the evidence of the Shen family's crimes and directly encircled the Shen family. And the Shen family's army was previously taken back by the imperial family of Mingqi. It was changed beyond recognition, and there were many spies mixed in, but the Shen family's army was crippled. Fu Xiuyi deceived the Mingqi's commoners and directly made such a rude move against the Shen family. This time Shen Xian was already prepared and had already started to privately unite the other officials who were dissatisfied with the Mingqi's imperial family. Even though those officials were small officials, but their strength was still greater than a lone wolf and horse. Secondly, Luo Lianying and Luo Liantai, who were far away in the Shaochun city, also brought the Luo family's army and rushed over to the Ding capital. The Luo family's army was raised by the Luo family, and rather than saying that it was the emperor's army, it would be better to say that it only listened to the Luo family's orders. In addition, they had been trained under Shen Xian's hands for the past few years, so Shen Xian was able to use the Luo family's army with ease. Other than these, there were also the people that Xie Jingxing had left in the Ding capital. At this point, everyone in the Chen family finally knew Xie Jingxing's identity. Even though they were shocked, they did not feel disgusted because of the current situation. In addition, Xie Jingxing was honest with Shen Xian previously, so they did not bother to reprimand him. Even though Xie Jingxing's men were few in number, they were extremely elite. He was especially outstanding in the field of gathering information. Fu Xiaoyi thought that he would be able to take down the gradually weakening Shen family in a short period of time, but he did not expect that the Shen family had been preparing for this day for a long time. Not only did he not manage to take down the Shen family in one fell swoop, he seemed to be stuck in a dead end, wasting his military strength. In Shen Qiu's letter, he said that the Shen family was now in conflict with the imperial family and had left the Ding capital. Even though Fu Xiaoyi's men were in hot pursuit, the Shen family did not let them reap any benefits. Now Shen Xian was discussing with the various officials whether they should overthrow this bastard imperial power. As for the final outcome of this matter, Shen Qiu did not mention it. Shen Miao also knew that the Shen family had been loyal for generations, especially old General Shen, who had a heart of loyalty. Now that they had become enemies with the imperial power, it was already treason and heresy. After overthrowing the imperial power, even if it was a success, who would be the emperor? To support a new ruler, and all the princes of Mingqi were not good people, so why not just establish oneself as king? Shen Xian definitely did not have that idea. At the end of the letter, Shen Qiu mentioned one thing. Currently the Shen family did not stay in the Ding capital because Fu Xiaoyi's people were everywhere in the Ding capital, thus the Shen family would only be at a disadvantage. They had retreated to the Hanguan Valley area, but in the surrounding villages, they discovered a number of Qin people. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.